future is now, I don't believe in later. I keep it pushing till I meet my maker. Real legends never die, they become greater. I put in work, look where I wound up. Found up at the top, built from the ground up. It's time to shine when we walking out. The world is mine, I'm the one they gon' be talking about. I can see it now, bright as the sun. I am the one, I just begun. Can't stop my run, till kingdom come. What's done is done, this is my world now. So raise up, we going way up. Time to face up, show what you're made of. I stayed up, never gave up, till I came up. This is my world now. This is my world now. Tonight's the night, I bring the fight. I got the crown, we kings, call me your majesty. Can't pull me down, got wings defying gravity. They try to dissect the strategy. They found winning's part of my anatomy. Part fighter, survivor, parts of a titan. Eyes of an eagle, heart of a lion. No sense of trying to convince me. Let me see, how can I put this simply? If you ain't with me, you against me. I can see it now, bright as the sun. I am the one, I just begun. Can't stop my run, till kingdom come. What's done is done, this is my world now. So raise up, we going way up. Time to face up, show what you're made of. I stayed up, never gave up, till I came up. This is my world now. Yeah, this is my world now. I stayed up, never gave up. I changed the game up. This is my world now. Hey, whose world? This is my world. Tonight's the night. I bring the fight. Hey, whose world? This is my world. This is my world now. Welcome to my world. Hey, whose world? This is my world. You in or you out? The future is now. Let's see who's down. Yeah. If you ain't with me, you against me. I can see it now, bright as the sun. I am the one, I just begun. Can't stop my run, till kingdom come. What's done is done, this is my world now. So raise up, we going way up. Time to face up, show what you're made of. I stayed up, never gave up, till I came up. This is my world now. I can see it now. This is my world now. This is my world now. So raise up, we going way up. This is my world now. I stayed up, never gave up, till I came up.
Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you.
Welcome back, Wolfpack. Dead YouTube channel Dire Wolf here for your weekly news recap. Behind enemy lines on YouTube, where speech is not free and the truth is demonetized, as it should be. Can't let you hear the truth. Yes. Alongside me is my co-host and producer and all-around great guy, Fox Trevise. How you doing?
Don't say mean things about me like that. How dare you?
I know the worst thing for you and myself are compliments, so
I don't mind the compliments. You That's Dire Wolf's kryptonite. Is just tell him he's like a good guy, he's a great leader, he's a hero.
Stop giving them ammunition. My real kryptonite is insult me, because I really hate when people insult me. I'm just when people insult me. I can't deal with it. Anyways, not true. Anyways, Thank you for everyone who makes this show possible, all those who donate to the show. We very much appreciate it. Thank you very much, Ori Main, Kaylette, Nathan, Cameron, Tetris Freak, Slowpoke, Thundra Erican, who is a female, so I hear, The White Lion, and Timberwolf, and many others who like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate all of it.
Yes.
We have 21 pages of notes.
Good God. Why?
A lot of them are bullet point discussion points. So
all right, so strap in. Also, I did some spring cleaning on my files on my computer this week. I reorganized a lot of my folder structures, got it all nice and neat. It was great. And then I guess Streamlabs was very dependent on my old file paths. So if you notice assets that are missing, like the screen on the current frame, let me know in chat and I will try to add them back. We tried to add most of them back. The show was in a very not great state about 20 minutes ago, but I got a lot of them back. Not all of them. That's probably why the music wasn't working either for most of the waiting period. But you know, it's stuff that happens. It happens to us, you know.
If you came here looking for perfection, you were wrong. That's all right. What'd you learn? Never clean and organize ever again.
Ever, never,
ever.
Okay. Alrighty. So, well, did you already do the thanks and stuff?
I did.
All right.
Let's go to our story.
Well, let's do our funny stuff. So we had some funny stuff. Well, actually, it's very serious stuff. So as you guys know, we have a new president. Very serious.
Do we?
Yeah.
It's not me. I thought I was coming from the president-elect office.
Yeah, no. So like for a while there, Dyer, you and I did have the same number of electoral votes as Joe Biden did, but eventually that was no longer true. Sadly. But we do have we do have some wise words from our speaker in chief.
Oh, no.
Crowder put together this nice little segment for us. So, you know, doing our attribution. We'll let Crowder tell you.
Speaking of which, blanket statements that are wildly offensive. No one's paying attention to this, and I think I know why. It's time for This Week in Biden.
And if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
And we have the
There
second
it
clip
is.
of this, right? The
Yes,
slow. Okay.
I have the slow.
Yeah.
You may have missed this.
Okay.
Did you watch this clip yet?
I have not.
All right.
I was going to be surprised.
Hold on to your butts. This was Joe Biden in a recent, but just watch the clip.
Look, the range of challenges Europe and the United States must take on together is broad and complex. And I'm eager to hear next.
What the?
Oh, he just dropped an N-bomb.
Yeah, hold on a second. I know what you're going to say. Not a word whisker, but it's a bad whisker. It's just a case for those who missed it.
Nigger to hear next. Nigger to hear.
Oh, that's a word whipper.
I didn't see that. No one's seen it. No one's talked about it.
Okay, you often see someone misspeak and then correct themselves by saying what they meant to say, right? In this case, he said the real word, right? He's eager to hear, and then corrected himself to say something so much worse. That made no sense in context.
My goodness. And I don't have the subsequent clip, but Crowder the next day, just to make sure that nobody thought that he was making this up or that it was edited or anything like that, he did have the recap from this episode where the YouTube captioning system, which actually if I go back and do it, the YouTube captioning system did catch what the word was, and the YouTube captioning system said the whole word. It didn't even start out. So, you know, there's that. Let's see.
Yeah, that's our president.
Yeah, right there. We got it right there. I'm eager to hear. And YouTube, man, you got the full hard G, full R, man, YouTube, you were just,
Okay.
yeah, that's
So this is not an example of him intentionally saying something racist. However, we have examples of him intentionally saying racist things in the past. This is funny, but the reality behind it is we have a president whose mind is failed, not failing, it's gone, and he's also a racist and probably a pedophile. highly likely.
Howitzer apparently won $500. How did you win $500? Was there a betting market that Joe would say the hard R?
He said he'd do it in 1 month.
Oh my god.
Oh, this is the second month though, is it not?
No, I mean they were within I think that was within the 30 days, but that was close. I might have been just outside. I don't know. It was definitely within the first full month, so we can go with that. I mean, you're just parsing a little bit of definitions there, but I think it flies.
I think he's morally correct.
Oh no! Disavow.
No, morally correct. He said it within a month.
Oh, okay. Oh
Not
my goodness.
Biden. Holy shit. He's not factually or morally correct.
Howitzer, what do you think the next word that he's gonna say within the next 30 days is? Let's
get that right.
Actually, don't type it in chat.
Yeah, just
I take it back. I take it back. All right. Well, that was fun. I'm sure that was Joe Biden to a Munich security conference.
Yeah.
So
this is the context of what the Europe was concerned about the most.
especially Munich. Munich was like, yeah, get him out of here. Man, I wonder. I really, what I'm more interested in is how is that translated to German? What did the translator do? Where was the signer at? Normally, all these events have signers. I don't know. What would the signer say? I'm painfully curious, and now I just thought of that question live on air. Had I thought about that an hour ago, I probably would have looked up what but I missed it. I'm sorry. I failed you guys. So, what is our next funny video here, Dyer? You picked this one.
Okay, well
I'm
let's
very
concerned
about this. Should I hit play?
Yes.
I don't know. I disavow, guys.
Listen to me, Republicans. Listen.
Oh God.
You are the people in history who warned us about.
That is actually like decent screamo. Yeah, that definitely sounds like some rage stuff there.
Not bad.
Yeah, that's some like decent. I don't know what genre I would call it, but it's not the worst metal I've ever heard. I'll go with that. I don't. Is revolutionary metal like a genre, like a subgenre? It probably is.
I don't know. However, I do find it funny. Yeah, I actually am the people that they've been told in college to be afraid of. This is a factual statement. They say that you should be scared of people like us, conservatives. People who value individualism, meritocracy, limited government, personal accountability, the rule of law, fair elections, equal treatment and opportunity under the law. These are things that are scary to the revolutionary Democrats, right?
Yeah.
I'll own it, though.
Yeah, the anti-communists, all that stuff.
We're monsters. We know it.
Yeah. We do what we can. Alrighty, so now we can get into our first story, which is a lot of fun. I also have to pull up a thing here. Hold on a second. I did such a good job like a year ago getting all the Streamlabs stuff set up, like perfectly fine-tuned, well-oiled machine, so that every time we did a stream, I didn't have to screw around with it at all. And then today,
you tried spring cleaning.
Yeah, and then today, all of a sudden, like I broke the entire thing a half hour before the show starts, and I'm like totally flustered now.
Oh, and the stream key. We got dropped.
Oh yeah. I thought that was just like the beginning of it. Was just I had broke the stream key, but that was just where it started. So all right, now I've got our visual aids, not that kind of aids. The visual HIV is up on the screen now. So, Dyer, did Joe Biden cancel a Department of Homeland Security operation targeting pedophiles?
Actually, we have a Dire Wolf Media fact check here saying true.
Okay.
But don't take our word for it. Let's look at Snopes.
Okay, as you guys can see on screen here, Snopes. They're fact checkers, so we can trust them, right? All right. So, from Snopes, the claim The claim is U.S. President Joe Biden canceled a Trump-era program aimed at deporting sexual offenders called Operation Talon, which, while I was reading this, I was thinking about why was it called Operation Talon, and it's because eagles have talons, and the eagle that is the United States was reaching down its sharp claws and just plucking the pedophiles like Joe Biden by the head in their sharp claws and just like throwing them back over the border. It was a great visual. Okay, so that's the claim. How did Snopes rate it? Well, Snopes rated this a mixture of true and false. That's interesting.
And as you know, mixture is code in Snopes ratings for something that is true but makes the Democrats look bad.
Yeah, it's true, but we don't want it to be true, so we're going to call it a mixture. All right.
It's an inconvenient truth.
Yeah, so per Snopes here, we have the part is what's true. So what Snopes says is true is that Operation Talon, a program planned in the final weeks of the Trump administration aimed at deporting sex offenders, was suspended by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement.
Otherwise known as the claim. The claim is true. That's what part of the claim is true. The entirety of the claim.
The whole claim is just true. Like, so
Yes.
What's true? The claim. What's not true? The things that aren't in the claim.
Operation Talon was an operation aimed at deporting sex offenders. Check. Joe Biden canceled it. Also check. Operation Talon was an ICE operation, and ICE is under the Department of Homeland Security, which is directly under the President of the United States, who is currently Pedo Joe. So, where is the controversy? Unless Joe is claiming he's not in control of his agencies, he's responsible, right? Is he not really president? Is that the part of the...
Yeah, Dyer. So about that, according to Snopes, what is false? The Biden administration had, quote, nothing to do with this decision, according to an ICE official. Homeland Security Investigations, a division of ICE, still investigates sex crimes committed by non-citizens.
So Snopes and ICE are claiming it might be false because Joe isn't actually in control of his own administration, isn't ultimately responsible for the administration that he leads. What happened to the buck stops here, right? While we are inclined to believe that, because I don't think he has the mental faculties, in this specific case, we have evidence that it does have something to do with the Biden administration, not just because he likes to smell little girls' hair. On January 20th, just hours after being inaugurated, Joe Biden instructed his acting DHS secretary to send an operational memorandum to ICE. Instead of reading you what some of the media outlets said it was, let's read what it directly said.
Okay, so we have here up on screen the actual memorandum that was sent by Joe Biden's acting DHS secretary to ICE. So this memorandum directs Department of Homeland Security components to conduct a review of policies and practices concerning immigration enforcement.
Come on, man.
Which sounds like ICE. So there's a bunch of crap in here. But if we skip down to Section C, that's where the meat and potatoes is. So Section C. Immediate.
Be gone from me,
Whoa.
you soy boy beta cock. The transaction is complete.
Have to protect the pedophile. I mean Democrats at all costs.
Is the pedophile like, is that multiple pedophiles, or is that like, is that like a yeah, is that like the Democrats, like they're like royalty, but it's like the pedophile, like I love it. All right, so again, so this is directly from... Okay, so what we're doing right now is debunking the claim from Snopes that Joe Biden didn't have anything to do with this. Joe Biden didn't have anything to do with this Talon thing getting canceled. So
except for actually, signing the memorandum and submitting it.
Yeah, so in the meat of this memorandum in option C, which you guys can go look at this. I'll go back up here to the top where the title is. So if you guys want to look at this, this was sent on January 20th. This was literally like an hour after he was inaugurated. This is the memorandum is called Review of an Interim Revision to Civil Immigration Enforcement and Removal Policies and Priorities. So Section C, that's where the fun part is, an immediate, that means now. Actually, it meant like 30 days ago. Immediate 100-day pause on removals. Wow, that seems pretty cut and dry. So the pause, let's see here. The pause on removals applies to any non-citizens present in the United States when this directive takes effect, with the final order of removal, except for one who. Now, this list I'm going to read out. So what this is saying is it is a pause on removing people from the country that are here illegally, except for if they fall into the following 4 categories. So there's an exception if, according to a written finding by the director of ICE, has engaged in or is a suspect of terrorism or espionage or otherwise poses a danger to national security of the United States. So one of the exceptions is if the director of ICE personally signs off on deporting them. Now, ICE is a pretty big organization. They handle, tens to 20s of thousands of illegal immigrants per month. And making the director of ICE have to sign off on one of them individually, that's a pretty big bottleneck. It's probably going to slow them down a bit. Let's see here. So a second exception is that if they were not physically present in the United States before November 1st, 2020. So if you came in for Christmas, you out of here. But if you're here before Christmas, then you're good to go. All right. Also, if you're here before the election, you're good to go. I'll let you guys decide on that one. Another exception is if the illegal immigrant has voluntarily agreed to waive any rights to remain in the United States. So if they want to go back, then they can go back. That's an exception. That's nice. And then the fourth one is for whom the acting director of ICE, following consultation of the general counsel, makes an individualized determination that removal is required by law. That sounds kind of like the first one where it says that if the acting director of ICE has deemed them a suspect of terror or espionage, then they can go. Or just number 4 is just if the director of ICE wants it to. So those are kind of don't even really count. Now, notably missing from the exceptions list is, again, this is an exception. If you fall into the exceptions, they're going to deport you. If you're not an exception, you're not getting deported.
I just want to point out one thing, that there was in January a 3,000 per day average border crossings on just the U.S.-Mexico border. And that's gone up in February by more than double. So you have to imagine that to actually detain all these individuals, the director would have to sign individually 3,000 or more authorizations, which he's not doing.
Yeah. Okay, so once again, so what I read off was, so the order says don't deport anybody, no more removals, unless you fall into one of these exceptions. So if you're not in an exception, you're not getting deported. Notably missing from the exceptions list is pedophiles and sex offenders. So the question goes back to the fact check that Snopes did. Why did ICE suspend an operation aimed at deporting pedophiles? Because Joe Biden ordered them to stop all deportations. That's why. Operation Talon was halted as a direct result of Biden ordering all deportations to stop. There is no other way to look at this. Snopes can get claims, quote unquote, from no-name officials saying that it had nothing to do with the Biden administration all they want, but it's just a complete lie to say that Biden ordering a halt on deportations has, quote, nothing to do with a halt on deporting pedophiles, because they fall into the category of all. So
right.
This is a pretty big doozy, because they're trying to pretend that Joe didn't order them to stop Operation Talon. Yes, but Joe Biden ordered them to stop all deportations. Operation Talon was specifically a deportation operation. So yeah, he didn't call it out by name. It was just part of the basket of all the deportation programs that were canceled.
So functionally, he did cancel Operation Talon. And if your claim is that he didn't specifically say the to cancel Operation Talon, so fucking what? You're just making an argument that he is inept that he's not looking at the consequences of his actions. That doesn't make it okay. There's still the result of his actions was the cancellation of the program at his behest, at his order. So that's what happened. And the fact check is, if Snopes was being serious, it's completely true. And the other part of the fact check that they tried to discredit this claim with was saying that it was not false because it was false to say that operation to deport sex offenders was canceled because there was still an operation to investigate them. Investigating them is not the same as deportations. Just because there still was an operation to investigate pedophile rings doesn't mean that they still had the capability of an organization built up to remove them from the country.
Yeah, so here's like a thing that happens with, like, say, the FBI. They'll have a FBI division that does the investigation, and then they'll have a different FBI division that does the arresting process, because the investigators are usually not the ones that are equipped to go out and capture people. So this was, yes, Homeland Security investigators. They did have an investigation into sex criminals, but the arm of Homeland Security that was going and collecting them and deporting them was Operation Talon. You got rid of, like, they're not, like, investigation and then the arrest and deportation. Those are different things. Like, you can investigate them all you want, but they're not going to be deported or arrested if Operation Talon is not in effect.
So you have one of two options. Either Biden is actively trying to protect illegal immigration and also illegal immigrants who are pedophiles, or he's so stupid and doesn't know what his administration is doing and the results of his edicts that were written by someone else, not him. One of the two options: pro-illegal immigration and pedophilia, or an idiot. Pick one.
Yeah, I think it's a big conflict of interest that Pedo Joe canceled a operation going after pedophiles. You know, it's a little bit of a big conflict of interest. You know, for reasons.
Probably a bit.
Right.
Now this is only one out of all the different orders he put out. Like, there's a whole bunch of, I don't want to say unintended consequences, but like terrible consequences that related to things.
Yeah. So jokes aside, like, realistically, this was an unintended consequence, right? So Joe Biden just said, stop everything, which is not a great leadership strategy. You shouldn't just do blanket edicts that have these that are likely to have a lot of unknown effects to it. Or unintended consequences. So, did Joe Biden say stop all deportations specifically because he wanted to stop Operation Talon? No, I don't think so. But I mean, Operation Talon was a much needed program. And because Joe Biden is just up there making these broad sweeping edicts by executive authority and just doing it to, satiate the left or, fit with their politics or whatever, and not thinking through the logic of it. He's just doing these party platforms.
Because he has activists writing his executive orders for him.
Yeah, and so you get these big unintended consequences, which is kind of, the definition of a leftist policy, right? Like, leftist policies, almost as a rule, will always have unintended consequences. But this one's pretty bad.
I want to bring up, there was another fact check from another organization on this same exact claim. It was PolitiFact, and theirs was a lot funnier. It says, says President Joe Biden canceled Trump's, quote, child sex ring operation, which saw thousands of arrests last year. The fact check is, no, Biden didn't cancel a child sex ring operation started by Trump.
And this is another one of those things where this is, where's the lie in Q, right? So Q's got a bunch of crazy stuff, but like the primary core of QAnon is that the Democrats are a gigantic satanic pedophile ring, and the Democrat Party exists to protect them. And I mean, you've got this situation where, let's be blunt here, is a lot of your child sex slaves are going to be trafficked from other countries. If you're coming into America, they're probably going to be coming through Latin America, through Mexico. If you have a ICE or an ICE operation trying to target that, they're probably going after trafficking. That's what the intersection between sex criminals and immigrations is trafficking, international sex trafficking. So you've got this kind of quote unquote a conspiracy theory, but where's the lie? That the Democrats are an international ring of pedophiles, and then Trump sets up an operation to go after trafficking, international sex trafficking, and as the very first thing Biden does unintentionally is accidentally cancel it. I mean, I mean, QAnon literally can't write this stuff. There's some things that they can make up, but the reality of the situation, they can't make that up. It just happens.
The conspiracy theories, stories they come up with have a lot of a basis on facts. So they take real facts and they base their conspiracy around those things. Yeah,
QAnon's really good at making shit up, but they can't even conceive of this stuff. You can't make it up.
It's kind of like the Babylon Bee, though. Like, they're trying to make satire, they just can't.
Right? All right. So back to the Snopes. So they had what's true, which was, just the whole claim was true. What's false? Nothing was false about it. Which actually, the fact check on their what's false was actually false. Like, that's what we just did, was we went to go look at the actual order. We're doing all primary sources tonight. And so their what's false was false, surprisingly. And then they've got what's undetermined. So Snopes says, what's undetermined? Well, it's unclear whether or not Operation Talon was ever an operation. It's also unclear whether the suspension is temporary or permanent, though officials have referred to ICE's new guidelines as, quote, interim.
This is not undetermined, you idiots at Snopes. Operation Talon was a partnership between ICE and the U.S. Marshals. And while this named phase was new, it is really an extension of Operation Not Forgotten, which took place last year. You may remember that dozens of stories in the last year of the U.S. Marshals rescuing hundreds of trafficked kids from pedos. Operation Talon was an extension of that operation, which was definitely a real operation.
Yeah. Let's see here. So Snopes also seems to be taking particular umbrage with the word canceled. So again, the claim up here is that the Biden canceled it. And so Snopes is really focused on this word canceled. And you can see down here they say, well, the suspension is temporary or permanent. So, it's not that it was canceled. It's just that it might be permanently suspended. We're really like, chopping at the bit here. You're really bringing out that last little bit of truth. That's what Snopes does. They bring all the truth out of it. It's like a dry wash rag, and they're just twisting it as hard as they possibly can to get that last drop out of it. And I would say the last drop is definitely that it's false that it was canceled. It's true that it might be permanently suspended.
Hey, Fox, if the police chief in your city said they're going to temporarily or permanently suspend all police services in your area, would you really care about the definition between canceled and suspended for 100 days or more?
Yeah. It's not we don't have a cancel culture. We have a permanent suspension culture.
Right.
It's not that I was canceled off of Twitter. It's that I was permanently suspended, which is actually technically that is true. Like, that's what Twitter told me. Twitter told me, like, they didn't actually delete my account. They just said I'm suspended forever. So, it's great.
The distinction there is so unimportant between canceled and permanently suspended, maybe.
The English language is just so poetic. All right. Are we ready for our next one? Okay, so war.
What is it good for?
Well, it's really good for the military-industrial complex and the Joe Biden administration. But I repeat myself. Thank you for editing that.
You're welcome.
All right. So on Thursday, it was a busy day on Thursday. It was a little rainy too. On Thursday, the military conducted airstrikes on locations in Syria. Oh, Dyer, were the airstrikes conducted by the Air Force or by the Navy? I have to ask.
None of the stories specified.
Oh, okay.
I think it was the Air Force by but I'm not gonna.
It's a 50-50 shot that it was the Navy. Which
I'm
is
fairly
funny.
sure it was the Air Force.
Is this picture on screen? Somebody edited this, right? Like this
Yes,
was a
this is
Photoshop.
not real. This is
Okay.
This is fake news. I thought it was funny.
It
So
is
this-
funny. I just
thought it
wanted
was
to
funny.
make sure that this was a Photoshop. Okay, so this is a Photoshop, but it is very, very funny, and it's basically true. Okay, so on Thursday, the military, possibly the Navy, conducted airstrikes on a location in Syria. Unverified reports from multiple media sources claim that the targets were Iranian-backed rebel groups, possibly ISIS. The justification for the airstrikes was that they were in response to those militia groups on February 15th launching rocket attacks on an Iraqi military base, killing one American contractor. Let's see here. An unnamed U.S. official was quoted by CNN saying that, quote, a handful of rebels were killed in the resulting attack.
So a named source, Pentagon spokesman John Kirby, I was able to find, said that the strikes took place at the President Biden's direction directly. He directly ordered the airstrike. CNN falsely reported that the strikes, which marked the U.S. military's first known action under President Joe Biden. That is absolutely 100% a false statement. In reality, the military operations in the Middle East never ended. For one thing.
Well, do we know what the do you know what Biden's first military operation was? I do.
I have it listed in the next bullet point.
Oh, okay.
I'll let you say it. So just first off, we're starting from the point of they never ended. So there's active military operations under Biden, and not reporting on them doesn't mean they aren't happening.
Well, and he also, I mean, they were in the middle of a drawdown when Biden took office, and he stopped the drawdown, which is in itself a decision, right? So he
Exactly.
It wasn't just business as usual. He made a specific effort to change what the military footing was in the Middle East. That seems to be a military decision to me.
I also had some kind of hard information that shows it was an intentional act by Biden. We actually have a source. I know a primary source on that later in this story. But
yes,
so
for the record, everything here is very well sourced, and Dyer's going to say what the source was every time he says a fact.
Yes. So that said, the media did report on them. So CNN said has no excuse. Let's go with the first fact here.
Okay. So was this Joe Biden's first military action as a new president? No, it was not. What was Joe Biden's very, very first military action? Well, it probably won't surprise you, but you kind of maybe have forgotten about it. It's kind of funny. Joe Biden's first military action as new president was extending the deployment of 25,000 National Guard troops in D.C. Joe Biden's very first military action was to deploy troops to the capital city. That's because if you'll remember, now you might say, well, Fox, they were already there when he took office. It's not his fault. Yeah. So the National Guard was supposed to be there through Inauguration Day. That was what they were scheduled for, and they were going to leave after the inauguration was over. They didn't leave because the Democrats,
they're still there.
Joe Biden being the commander-in-chief. Now, the Democrats wanted this, but Joe Biden's the commander-in-chief. The buck stops with him. They extended that to be until after the impeachment hearing, which was another month. And then after the impeachment hearing, they extended it again until, quote-unquote, the fall, which was very ominous. Do they mean autumn? Do they mean the collapse of Western civilization? I don't know. It's dealer's choice. But the very first act that Joe Biden did with the military was to maintain a troop deployment in the capital city of America. And I think the second thing he did was also that re-extension again. So, I mean, if they want to say that him bombing Syria was the very first military action, I mean, that's at least fourth on the list. I think that there's been others between the ones I'm referencing, but at least two of them before bombing Syria, at least two of them were deploying troops in the capital. So
yes,
that does count as a military action.
It does. And you know what another military action was? Reported by the New York Times, by the way. They reported that Biden authorized an airstrike to kill an ISIS leader in late January. So this is even the first airstrike by Biden.
So there was this funny, kind of scary scary funny analysis by, I think it was CNN, and they were referencing that there's a big difference between the way the Joe Biden's war campaign is versus Trump's, because when Trump would bomb something, there's a lot of commotion in the media. Do you have this spot already?
No, totally talk about it, please. Right now, it's a perfect spot.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the media said, Joe Biden, when Trump did something, there's a lot of commotion around it. It was really controversial, and the media would talk a lot about it. And again, this is the media reporting how they reported on Trump. And, it is very disruptive to America because there's such a big deal when Trump did anything with the military. But it's very different under Biden because the media doesn't cover it with the same kind of fervor. It's kind of quiet. They don't really report on it. They don't cause a controversy. And so it was very funny because the media was reporting on how, well, the only difference between Trump doing war stuff and Biden doing war stuff is that, we, the media, we freak out when Trump did it, but we're just very quiet and don't tell anybody when Biden does it. That's the big difference. And it was very, very meta. It's almost like hard to describe it because it's so self-referential. It's difficult to say it again. The media does this thing where it's very, very self-referencing. They always find themselves in the story. It's very, very interesting.
How did they not realize by the way, it's not one person who said this. Multiple sources made similar comments across mainstream media, CNN being one of them, and live on air. And I remember calling you, I believe, when I first was listening to that. I'm like, what the hell? How do they not realize that they're saying the
no
only
self-awareness
moral difference between Trump making an airstrike in Syria, which happened, and they went over they went crazy about it, and Biden doing an airstrike in Syria in the exact same, by the way, I don't know if you remember this, but the exact same justification. It was U.S. troops were attacked in a rocket attack, days before, and this was the response, right? Exact same scenario, almost to the T, except for it was a different location. And they said the only moral difference is how we reported it.
Yeah. So the media, when Trump does it, it's like, well, it's crazy when Trump does it because we said it was crazy. And it's not crazy when Biden does it because we said it wasn't crazy. Wow, really great reporting there. That's fantastic. It's kind of like the definition of a woman where a woman is somebody who identifies as a woman, which is self-referential because woman is in the definition again. And you've got the media where it's like, well, it's crazy because we said it was crazy. It's like, yeah, that's self-referential. Can you explain anything about the context about it, other than how you reported on it? I don't care how you reported on it. You're supposed to report on what happened, not on how you reported on it.
So crazy. Okay.
There's not even an emperor, infidel. There is no emperor. In fact, no. The infidel, the emperor has clothes. There's just no emperor in them. And they're invisible. All right. Continue on there.
Another military action that was done under Biden before this time, because they're saying, remember, CNN is saying this is the first military action under Biden, an absolutely false statement. On February 4th, the New York Times reported that Biden had halted the drawdown of troops in the Middle East and had ordered the continuation of military operations. That was an intentional act to continue military operations in the Middle East, multiple different countries.
Yeah, if you're in the middle of, yes, we will, Voracious. I think it's the next story, actually. If you're in the middle of a troop drawdown or a withdrawal, or de-escalation, and you decide that you're no longer going to de-escalate, you're no longer going to withdraw, that is a military decision. I don't they've gotten so esoteric with what the definitions of words are. It's not canceled, it's permanently suspended. It's not a military decision, it's military action. It's, man, these guys.
Again, I feel like I need to repeat, every single statement in this story was directly sourced from 8 different news sources. None of them are what I know. So Pentagon spokesman John Kirby was reported on 9 February saying that 900 U.S. troops were actively deployed to Syria with the mission to, quote, enable the enduring defeat of ISIS. He noted that the new admin changed their mission from protecting oil fields to fighting ISIS. That is a change in mission ordered by the administration. Is that not a military action?
You know what's really crazy? It's kind of like, I guess it's an aside, but that we had like, it was open military orders to defend oil fields abroad. Like, I'm guessing like those aren't American companies like drawing up that oil. And like American companies here at home that have oil fields, like they will hire private security.
It was a Turkish company actually.
Because I mean, you know, so those are areas where there's not a lot of people around. It's a place where you can do vandalism and stealing stuff like that. But they'll hire private security. But like, why isn't the like? I don't understand why like small businesses or even regular businesses like here at home, like why can't we just call on the military to like defend our like the military won't defend, you know, thousands of small businesses on 100 different main streets over the summer getting burned down by Black Lives Matter, but they will go defend for free for them, a Turkish oil company. Like, Turkey, hire some fucking private people. Like, hire private security. Fuck you. Like, why the fuck are we paying for this? I hate everything about how they set up the world. Like, yes, we're going to do a great reset, but it's not going to be the fucking people who set this shit up that are going to be at the fucking top. Like, I wish that the left meant eat the rich when they say it. Because, like, I mean, like, eat, like, the super fucking elites that are setting up all this stuff. Eat the central bankers. Like, I fucking hate all of this. It's so awful. Why do we have a system where it is illegal to defend your own business in some jurisdictions? The police will come arrest you if you try to defend your own business with a gun. But abroad, those same people who are not allowed to defend their business with their own gun, they're being taxed to pay for the military to defend literally a foreign country's business. What the fuck is going on? Who did this? Why?
I would have loved to have a 900 in quotation U.S. National Guard protecting those businesses. I would have loved to have that.
Hell yeah. I mean, Jesus fucking
we get 900
Christ.
in quotations troops protecting oil fields in Syria.
I mean, Turkey's got enough money for a revolution. They certainly got enough money to defend their oil fields. If all their fucking idiots weren't out there fighting each other in their own streets, having a civil war and a revolution and all that crap, they could probably go defend their own damn oil fields.
Yeah, probably.
Why do we do this? I don't like. Why? I don't understand. I
don't want to be there. I don't know why. Well, I know why, because it's financially beneficial to some people at the top.
Yeah, but it's only to Europe. Until Joe Biden shut down our oil fields, the oil there wasn't important. We were just defending it for no reason.
We had our own oil. You're right.
Like, there was no reason. Like, who cares if Turkey's not economically stable? It's not economically stable anyways. Europe is making itself insane anyways with their own debt issues. Oil's got very little to do with it.
And you know that they claim in Europe that they have to deal with the Middle East problem because of all the warring between the tribes is resulting in displacement of people that are going to look for a place to live in Europe, and they can't take all the immigrants. No, actually you can. You have a very obvious solution you're ignoring. If you stop accepting them, they'll stop coming.
Yeah. I guess the way that I could justify it, I don't really like the justification, but like the kind of on the back of the napkin justification is that it doesn't matter who's buying and selling the oil. They're buying and selling the oil in dollars because we have the petrodollar. You have to. It doesn't matter what country you are. It doesn't matter who's selling. It doesn't matter who's buying. You have to transact it in U.S. dollars. So in a way, we always have a vested interest in oil, no matter who it's going to or going from. And I guess in theory, if let's say Turkey got uppity and they wanted to switch off the petrodollar, then we've got a bunch of leverage because we'd say, well, you know, we were defending your oil, but now because you're switching out the petrodollar, you know, we're going to defend it from you. So I guess that's like a point of leverage. I just thought of that just now as a justification. So I haven't really thought through whether or not I like that as a policy. I think for American kind of dominance in the world, it does make sense when I'm thinking about it on the surface, but I would have to think about it more. What do you think, Dyer?
I think that, yes, we may have an economic interest in it, but I don't think it justifies us being in forever wars over there still.
Right. Yeah. So like the petrodollar is good in theory, but if it requires too much blood and resources to maintain that, maybe we shouldn't have anchored all of U.S. world dominance to the petrodollar. Maybe we should diversify our dominance portfolio.
There's also a good chance, if we look at some of the quotes later on in this article, that us leaving might actually result in the stabilization that would at least make the oil market stable, not their entire country. Obviously, that's up to them. But we'll keep reading on.
Okay. So, Pentagon spokesman John Kirby said specifically the strikes, quote, the strikes destroyed multiple facilities located at border control points used by a number of Iranian-backed militia groups, including Kataib, Hezbollah, and Kataib Saeed al-Shirad, Kirby said. You'll remember Hezbollah from, famously one of the people who did something. There's yes. some of the people who did something. The operation sends an unambiguous message. President Biden will act. This is a quote. President Biden will act to protect American coalition personnel. At the same time, we have acted in a deliberate manner that aims to de-escalate the overall situation in both eastern Syria and Iraq. De-escalate bombs of peace. Expensive or explosive, but mostly peaceful bombs. And the fire and destroyed structures. I mean, they were fiery, they were dusty and debris-y, but they were mostly peaceful.
Okay, I want to foot stomp that he's saying that one of the primary purposes of this military strike, this airstrike, was to send a political message. And I also want to point out that the airstrike on this week was over a week after the strike on American personnel. It was not American troops in contact, right? It happened later on. It wasn't against missile launching platforms. It was against other border control points, not rocket launching sites.
So it's right. So, all right. So for whatever reason, might have been the real reason why they said it, that they did it, was because there was an attack on our troops stationed in the area, attack on one of the contractors, and he died. And this was retaliatory, and that if we didn't retaliate, then these kinds of strikes would happen again. We'd lose more contractors, lose more soldiers, et cetera, et cetera. So that kind of begs the question, though, is why is there troops and contractors there in the first place? Let's not forget why there are troops in Syria in the first place, because diplomat Jim Jeffrey, who we've covered on the show before, an unelected civilian, seized control of the military in Syria. Now you might think I'm being hyperbolic, but I'll explain. This unelected civilian in the State Department lied to Trump and the Trump White House and the American people about the number of troops that were deployed in Syria. So Trump was trying to draw down the number of troops in Syria, and this guy kept saying, yep, we drew them down, even though they really didn't. And they were off by as much as, like, I think it was like 2,000 to 5,000 troops, which is like, that's not nothing. That's a couple of guys. It's almost as well. It's less than the number of guys that were in DC. But so not to rehash this entire story, we did cover it at the time. But basically, this guy at the State Department, civilian, unelected, he seized control of the military operations in Syria, and he was circumventing what the commander-in-chief wanted them to do, and he was sending his own orders that they needed to stay deployed. That is nothing less than a coup. It was a civilian taking direct control of a military operation. Now, he didn't get control of the whole military. He didn't do anything else with it other than just maintain a war in Syria. But you've got Trump trying his best and doing pretty well at getting peace in the Middle East. I mean, for the first time ever, right? I mean, like, there were songs about that in the 70s because it was funny because it would never happen, right? Trump figures it out over the course of about his last 3 years. He did record peace deals in the Middle East, stuff that we've never seen before. And one part of that was committing to a drawdown and actually drawing down troops. And he wanted to pull out of Syria. He was trying. And this civilian guy just decided, well, I know that Trump's the commander-in-chief. I know there's a military chain in command, but you know what? I'm in charge. I'm going to take control of the military, and I'm going to keep those guys there. There's soldiers that died that were severely injured during that time. Soldiers who should have been removed from there at the order of Trump, and they were still there getting shot at, getting killed, getting injured, because this Jim Jeffries decided that, Orange Man bad, and I want to do a power play. I want to keep those guys there.
Yeah, he tried to play it off as he was, just resisting. He's part of the resistance. Not a big deal. He was doing his duty to protect the country by keeping U.S. troops in a war that the people voted for a president to end. So it was not only was he going against the will of the president, it was also going against the will of the people, and he took it upon himself to put American soldiers in danger. People died because of him. And I want to remind you, despite all of that military operation that he had keep going on, what did they achieve?
Well, and he was doing that approximately over the course of, I think it was about 6 months ago is when he had his expose saying that he did it. And he had been doing this over the course of the previous 18 months. So if you think about it, if Trump had actually had a full 2 years of what he had tried to do in Syria to draw down the troops, if that had actually been executed the way he had ordered it, I'm betting by the time that we get to now, then there's no more troops in Syria, or there's a very, very small contingent, but there's not a place to get attacked with rockets and stuff. So the whole reason why this is even happening is because Orange Man bad, I guess I would call them Democrat insurgents, coup, what's the leader of a coup? But I mean, these, I don't know what else you would call it. You have Democrat operatives embedding themselves in government, seizing control of the military during the Trump administration. And because of that, we're now in a situation where there was extra troops there when there shouldn't have been. And then they get shot at, and, one of the contractors get killed. And then now we're having, war footing with Syria. It makes you wonder.
Yep. So retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis is a senior fellow for the Defense Priorities think tank and a former highly decorated combat veteran lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army and the author of The 11th Hour in 2020 America. He said that this about Biden's Middle East policy. If the Biden administration's objectives are to avoid war in the Middle East and keep America safe, continuing to apply the thoroughly discredited maximum pressure campaign is the last thing the new president should do. By the way, that was the Obama era's policy. Though it may appear counterintuitive, withdrawing all our combat troops from Iraq and Syria is Biden's best play. That's a very experienced military officer making that argument. So here's the reality with Iraq and Syria. Iraq. Iraq's American-supported government is extremely weak and incapable of maintaining the security and control of their own country. They know this. That's why they want America to be there. ISIS has conducted several effective terrorist attacks against Iraqi civilian and military targets over the last year, reported by multiple media articles. This government does, again, they do want us there because they can't deal with the terrorist attacks from ISIS. If we pull out, Iran, Russia, and China will gain influence in the entire region. That is the fact, and I'm okay with it. That coalition, by the way, is opposed is currently at war with ISIS. We're at war with ISIS, so are they, but we're also at war with them. So when we were in Syria, we were fighting ISIS and also fighting Assad and also fighting Russia.
Yeah, there was. I seem to remember there was a time. I think it was in 2017 or 2018. But I think it was Tucker had pointed it out too. There was over the course of a 6-week period of time, there was a region in southern Syria in which we were fighting alongside Syria against ISIS, and there was a region in southern Syria where we were fighting, I think, alongside even the Russians, maybe, or I don't remember who it was. We were fighting alongside somebody else against Syria. So simultaneously, we had a battalion fighting against Syria. At the exact same time, another battalion was fighting alongside Syria. That is that kind of policy in the Middle East is very nakedly that it is only about wasting resources. It's about sending guys like Dyer over there to die, about wasting as much money as possible, and buying as many Lockheed missiles and F-35s as possible. It is only about that. When you are simultaneous, it's almost like, we were always at war with Oceania. That's what they did in 1984, was that they went to war with each other, the countries did, just to waste resources and to have a meat grinder to send people into. When you are in a situation in real life where you are simultaneously on one side of the battlefield fighting alongside your enemy, and on the other side of the battlefield you're fighting against them, it is so obvious that is only about wasting resources. It has absolutely nothing to do with any kind of coherent policy, any kind of coherent goal or strategy. It is merely about wasting resources and lives. And you got to wonder, why do they have an interest in wasting resources and lives? Well, the military-industrial complex has it's got a part of it, and then there's the other part. Is maybe I shouldn't say, but guys like Dyer tend to not vote for people like Biden.
Yeah,
you got to have a place to send them.
So right now we got to be realistic about what we're fighting for over there, which is first primarily for money. So we can burn money, so companies make profit, and second, the veil of justification is that we're trying to maintain influence in the region. Right now, that's all we're getting, but our trying to acquire influence is causing the destabilization and just causing a loss of tax dollars and American lives. I don't think it's worth it. Whereas if we leave, there is a coalition of bad actors who also have interest in maintaining a stable nation, but they would not have us funding and arming groups to fight against them. So I don't know if you guys know this, but ISIS was created under Obama by us spending time and money training them and then giving them weapons, and then they turned on us. And became our enemy.
Why did we give them weapons and training? Because they were helping us fight Al Qaeda, right? And then and the Taliban. And why were we fighting Al Qaeda and Taliban? Well, because we trained them and gave them weapons to help us fight the one before them. And then you can kind of keep going back like that every 10 years back to like the 60s.
Yeah. And you remember all those names that Fox labeled off earlier about these different groups, and also the Taliban and also ISIS? Those names are essentially meaningless, right? So they are a bunch, a lot of individual tribes that change allegiances constantly. They only are your friend as long as you have a parallel interest at that moment. And the problem is, every time we try to make an ally, we fund them, we give them weapons to fight alongside us against another group of tribes that we've given a name to. And then as soon as they're done with us, they just turn on us and we're fighting them again. So this is a never-ending, repeating war where it's just the same actors keep changing allegiances. There is no end game where we win the conflict.
It really is the 1984 setup where you just have selected teams of people who are allies and enemies, and every few years you just shuffle the deck, and then your former enemy is now your ally, and you're going against this other guy. It is just about creating a fake war that consumes resources. And naming all of these different tribes. I mean, there's dozens of different names for them, and I kind of think, it's a lot like the gender studies departments, where if there's not new genders to discover, then there's no reason for the gender studies department. So they always have to come up with new genders. That's why there's 87, 92, 117. Like that's why they have to keep coming up with new ones, because if there's no new ones to be found, then there's no reason for their department to exist. Same thing with military intelligence. If they can't find any new, tribal names, well, then there's no really reason for them to exist. When in both scenarios, both in gender and in Middle Eastern tribes, the truth is that there's only two. For gender, it's only male and female, and for the Middle East, it's only Shia and Sunni.
Yes,
they all boiled. You can call them whatever you want, but deep down, there's only two. It's only two in each.
It was Shiite, by the way. But your
Whatever.
point was taken. There's no. Just like in the last 18 months and the last 4 years and the last 12 years.
ISIS too. The infidel.
There isn't a winning scenario. And Trump identified this, by the way. He had his exit plan planned out because he realized there's no way we're going to achieve a military victory where we just have a bunch of stable nations that love America, which is what their goal is. That's not going to happen, right? Because the people that we're trying to fight with us, so it's their war, not ours, they don't want us there, and they will still be our enemies when they maybe get power. And they're all terrorist groups, not actual legitimate nations, right? The one nation we put in place is so weak that they control nothing. They require us to be there. If you can't control your own country, you can't defend your own country, then maybe you shouldn't be in power, and that's not our problem. Now, if Russia and Iran and China want to try to play in the sandbox to try to get peace, have at it. Let it be their money sink. It shouldn't be ours. It shouldn't be where we're sending our young men and women to die and to just for the goal of enriching Lockheed Martin.
I mean, why don't we do for Lockheed and Boeing? I mean, we can't already do it for Boeing. Just do what we do for the airline industry. Just give them $100 billion every year in a stimulus bill like we did the last year. Just the airlines didn't do anything. We just gave them $100 billion. I mean, I think it'd be a lot cheaper if, we just decided, okay, Lockheed and Boeing, they don't make anything except for government handouts. We just give them each $100 billion every year, and then we stop the wars. Like, they'd be happy, we'd be happy. It'd be a lot cheaper, less death. See, people say, well, conservatives, you're not willing to compromise. You're not willing to find middle. I think that's fucking middle ground right there.
And then we have that Biden has cut the budget for the military. Well, is as seemingly expanding our operations. I don't understand how that works.
Well, it's similar to a story we're going to cover later in COVID, where COVID is the COVID cases are dropping precipitously, but somehow it's more dangerous than ever.
So it just does not supposed to make sense. Then.
Yes, it is two contradictory facts, which media says, well, this, therefore that. But, like, the two statements are completely contradictory. But if you say it with enough confidence, Dyer, some people might believe you. Or maybe you'll believe yourself. Just fake it till you make it.
Next paragraph.
You're just not being a team player.
I guess not.
All right. Let's see. So Trump last year struck a deal with the Taliban to remove U.S. troops by the 1st of May if the Taliban, who is also at war with ISIS, would stop conducting acts of violence against the U.S. This, of course, is a ploy to allow America to leave with the ability to claim, quote, victory, not retreat. Practically speaking, the agreement was meaningless in terms of securing peace in the region, and it was kind of understood that, I think the deal was that, like, the Taliban just needed to stop for, like, 50 days and while we pulled out, and that if they would just not attack us for the 50 days it took us to pull out, we would just call it a victory. And then afterwards, we just kind of give a wink and the nod, and they could go back to doing whatever the fuck they want to do. But we got to say, oh, we win. But, you know, they're so proud sitting on their dirt chairs in a hole in the ground, drinking dirty water and fucking goats. They're so proud they couldn't just stop attacking us for 50 days and let us win. Because if we would, well, that was just too much of a hit to their pride. I mean, it's one thing to fuck goats and to live in a hole, but like they couldn't handle losing to America. That was just too big a blow to their pride, and they had to go back and attack us, so we never pulled out.
They're trying to share their goat fucking culture with us. All right, it's important to them. I know that Trump really wants to always be the winner and everything. I know a lot of Americans feel the same way, but doesn't it sound a little infantile that we're like just faking that we won just to leave, with like pretending it is positive?
It was a really interesting case study in like these broad scale lies. Like there's like broad scale lies about a narrative where like everybody involved knows that it's false, but like we all just
killed himself.
Yeah, but we all just like agree that like it's simpler if we believe the lie. But like everybody knows, and so it's kind of like, well, what's the point of lying if everybody knows? And it's like, well, you know, it's just what we do. We're humans, so I don't. It's a very interesting case study in that.
Yeah. Next.
Why are we talking about West Virginia? Okay, so on the 18th of February, a couple of days ago, NATO agreed to deploy 3.5 thousand troops to Iraq, which I'm guessing was probably about like 3.4 thousand of them were probably American troops, but you know, that's NATO. Let's see here. If they want to take over this forever war, maybe we should let them. Though probably now that Trump's not in office, we'll probably be bankrolling most of NATO again. So, and we also staff it and, you know, fill it with blood. So,
we need a Brexit from NATO.
Yeah. I don't understand how, like, what U.S. troops are in NATO? Are they just directly pulling battalions out of the branches to put them under NATO command? Or is there like, can you join NATO just as its own military branch?
No, they still belong to their host countries. The countries assign units to a NATO commander. And
okay, so it's like commander. It would be like an army unit assigned to NATO.
And you'll still have a unit operating with its own people, but they might be co-assigned with other nation military units.
I was just trying to figure out, like, why would anybody join NATO? So I was trying to figure out how they were getting military people, but I guess if they're just stealing squads, and that's how it works. Okay.
I can't tell you how pissed off I'd be if I got assigned to or deployed to a NATO unit. Man.
It's like I can't understand why, which I guess now it makes sense, but like I couldn't understand why somebody would want to be a soldier under NATO specifically instead of just being like in the army. It's very similar to like, I don't understand why somebody who wants to be a pilot would list in the Navy. It doesn't make sense.
Stop it. It's already dead. It's already dead.
Like, oh, I really want to fly a plane. I'm going to enlist in the water branch. All right. Let's see.
Or
so,
the Coast Guard has planes too. Ah! They're like the retarded little brother of the Navy. They still have planes.
Yeah, so the Air Force doesn't have boats, but the Navy has planes. The Army has planes. The Coast Guard has planes. And it used to be the Air Force was special because they had space, but now they don't have space anymore because they split it off with the Space Force. And the funny part is that because Elon Musk's rocket retrieval technology can land on a drone ship in the ocean, it's very, very likely that in the next 10 years, Space Force will also have boats that they can land rockets on. So everybody's going to have all of the toys, all of the things, except for the Air Force will only have the air. Except for all of the other branches will also have air. So I don't know what the Air Force does. It doesn't make any sense.
Oh, don't worry. We still have cyberspace. Oh, wait.
Oof. All right. So Biden drew heavy criticism from the Democrats for unilaterally ordering an airstrike in Syria. but they didn't care about the previous one for some reason. So it was just, I don't know. Maybe they were probably still like having thrills up their legs for the first one. They just didn't realize.
Yeah, can you imagine getting upset? Like, oh, how dare you do an airstrike? Like, you totally ignored the last one like less than a month ago. Wait, 28 days ago. Why is this one an issue? So, some of the Senate Democrats on Friday criticized President Biden's decision to not confer with every last member of Congress prior to launching the airstrike. Biden had briefed all of the members of Congress he is required by law to brief, the Security Council and the congressional leadership. So he did what he's supposed to do, and this is actually a ridiculous argument that he has to tell every single member of Congress. That's never been a thing. And they made the same argument about Trump, actually. They criticized him, but they were a lot louder about it, because I'm sure most of you guys are only hearing this criticism from us.
Yeah, well, I mean, they hated Trump, but Biden was meant to be a warm body, well, a lukewarm body in a chair, right? It's like he wasn't supposed to be the one in charge. It was supposed to be the Democrat Party in general, like Nancy and the other party leaders. And so if Biden's doing something kind of on his own, they're like, oh, nope, Grandpa, nope, come back over here, Grandpa. You gotta come talk to us before you do that. Nope, you took your pills twice. Now you're gonna be in real trouble. Nope, don't walk out in the street. No, you can't drive. Yeah, that's what they're doing with him, because they didn't really want him to be president because they trusted his judgment. They wanted him to be president because they knew they could control him. And if Biden goes off and does something on his own, which this might have been a decision that he made on his own, it sounds like, then there's going to be problems.
I mean, he did confer with the Security Council and all of the top Democrats, including Pelosi. Why didn't Pelosi tell everyone else, huh?
I don't know.
It was low-level Democrats who were not in the know who complained about it, so they can just fucking shut up. So many people upset with Biden about this was a bunch of anti-war lefties who, for some reason, voted for the VP for Obama and a pro-war Democrat, Joe Biden, and they were surprised that when he got in office, he was pro-war. Surprise, surprise. You voted for someone and you know exactly who he was, and now you're complaining about it. He's like, oh, I wouldn't have voted for him if I know this. Oh, fucking shut up.
I wonder... I mean, there's so many different political spheres that this is happening in, right? Where, like, it was very obvious that Biden was for lockdowns, and you have people who are like, I didn't know Biden was for lockdowns. It's very obvious that Biden was pro-war, and there are people who are like, I didn't know he was pro-war. Very obvious that Biden was going to shut down fracking, and people are like, I didn't know he was against oil. I think it was very obvious for us because we are not looking at exclusively mainstream media sources. And I just wonder how many people are going to be able to make that connection that the get a water bottle. I wonder how many people are going to be able to make that connection that it is them watching exclusively mainstream media sources, that is what is causing them to not be able to perceive reality and to be very surprised when reality reasserts itself. There's kind of that saying is that, the one of the good things about being conservative is that eventually reality has to reassert itself. And, right now it might be, a lot of us probably preferring that reality would reassert itself quicker. But, this is kind of an example where on small scale, the reality is that Joe Biden's pro-war, anti-oil, pro-lockdown, and the media lied about that. And they lived in this fantasy land, and they fed a fantasy land to all of their viewers. And then reality reasserted itself in that small way rather quickly. It's just whether or not are these people going to make that jump, that the reason why they were misinformed is because the mainstream media was misinforming them. And then once they realize that, will they even be able to find alternative sources because of the way the mainstream media and the big tech are trying very hard to make sure that nobody, Jesus Christ, that nobody is able to get outside of their echo chambers. Dyer. That was really speedy. I hope you don't hurt yourself.
I'm fine. So the problem here isn't that an airstrike was used to destroy destroy a target that was threatening U.S. personnel. If that was just what happened here, that specific part of the equation is not the problem. Using an airstrike to defend American lives is okay. And they're going to argue that when we complained about what he did, that's what we're complaining about. No, it's not. Though, that fact is in dispute right now, whether or not they actually were, protecting troops that were in danger, because, it happened 12 days later and there wasn't troops in actual contact and they weren't actually targeting rocket launchers. They were targeting checkpoints. So it is in dispute whether or not this actually was for the purpose of defending American lives, like they said. And it's very possible it was very much more, like Kirby said, meant to be a message to our adversaries. Regardless, though, what is the problem is that our troops are there in the first place, that our troops are remaining in our region in the first place. That would require us to use airstrikes to defend them because they're there and they shouldn't be. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's very circular reasoning. I guess I'd also like to point this out. So we're talking about other branches. It's unrelated. Just a bit of levity in the middle of the stories. Or maybe I'm an idiot. I would be okay with Biden if he would rename the other branches that don't match their elements. So the Air Force matches its element. Space Force matches its element. What about the Navy? Call it the Water Force. What about the Army? Call it the Earth Force. What about the Marines? Grand Force. You got to match the elements with the military. It makes sense. I don't know where we went wrong.
Well, Fox, you're right. You are an idiot. I'm kidding.
You love it. Like the Coast Guard could be the Sand Force.
Stupid. Oh my god. No, absolutely no. Maybe the Marines will be the Crayon Force.
The FBI could be the Asshole Force.
the PETA Defenders.
Yes. All right. Well, I think we did that story to death. Our next story is more war. My goodness. All right. So
I thought we just did the story.
I know we did. All right. So the Democrats are seeking the nuclear option, but not the way that you might be thinking. So we have a piece from military.com, which I'm going to pull up here real quick. Primary sources, guys. No, this is a secondary source. All right, so military.com. So nearly 3 dozen, that's a lot. That's like 36, nearly 36. 3 dozen House Democrats are urging President Joe Biden to relinquish his sole authority to launch nuclear weapons, arguing that no single person should wield apocalyptic military power. Quote, vesting one person with this authority entails risks. Past presidents have threatened to attack countries with nuclear weapons or exhibited behavior that causes other officials to express concern about the president's judgment, according to a letter which was spearheaded by California Reps Jim Pantana and Ted Lieu. Ted Lieu is notably one of the stupider. I think he's like second or third stupidest. I think Mazie Hirono. So Ted Lieu's in the House, so he's pretty stupid. He might be one of the top ones in the House. Mazie Hirono definitely takes the cake for like stupidest person in Congress, though. But she's a senator.
Oh my God, this isn't a orange man bad story. They're like, oh man, just because someone was elected who was orange, we must make sure the administrative branch has no power whatsoever.
Well, again. The Democrats had a candidate in the last election cycle that openly talked about nuking Oregon. So, I don't know. There's been some people who have exhibited, kind of cavalier attitudes towards nukes. But if you tried to rank them, I would think the Democrats are worse off than the Republicans.
And are you telling me that the people in Congress have better judgment? For God's sake, one of them thought you could tip over Guam if you put too many troops on one side.
I think, what was it? Is Hank something? Is Hank something? I think he should be the sole authority on nuclear weapons at all times.
Was he the guy who thought the internet was a bunch of tubes?
No, he's the one who thought Guam would flip over. He has such a childlike mind. I think he's probably like a savant.
Or maybe we should have someone like Maxine Waters, who is like saying we should use violence and intimidation against our political rivals. Maybe she should have control of nuclear weapons.
We should give it to Antifa. Yeah, Black Lives Matter.
I mean, it's kind of the same thing. Maybe AOC with her whole bachelor's degree master's degree in economics that she definitely didn't earn. Maybe she should have control of nukes,
AOC really inspires me to get my master's because it doesn't sound that hard.
I mean, I think all she did was get other people hard, and that's how she got it.
Oof.
Oof.
All right.
So the letter doesn't explicitly mention former President Donald Trump, but Democrats frequently questioned his mental state and composure during his time in the Oval Office. Trump often flouted the enormous power he had at his disposal, often making light of nuclear weapons and openly threatening to use them. One time saying his nuclear button was much bigger and much more powerful than that of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, but where's the lie? Where's the lie?
It's true. It's a joke. And yes, sometimes you do need to intimidate little dictators. I'm sorry. Yes. Little dictators. So, Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, told Democrats 2 days after a pro-Trump mob, this is a quote, isn't it? Assaulted the Capitol on Jan 6th.
No, this is military.com.
All right.
Editorializing a bit.
There's a little editorialized there. Where's that much? Anyways, so 2 days after the Jan 6th, she had spoken with Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, about preventing an unstable president from launching nuclear weapons. She's also the person who was asking the National Guard to have machine gun emplacements to deal with protesters. You'll remember that our report last month that Nancy was technically attempting a coup here because she was attempting to undermine the military chain of command, asking if the military would remove Trump from office. So should we have someone like her who wants to do a fucking military coup have control of nuclear weapons?
It's incredible. It's incredible that somebody that has been in government as long as Nancy and also been third in line to the presidency for as long as she has been. It's amazing that she doesn't understand the division of power between the branches. She needs to watch some Schoolhouse Rock or something.
Yeah, well, she has the qualifications of a glass of water with a D on it, so I'm not surprised.
That is true. Though, if you ask me, I'll take the glass of water, thank you. The worry is not about... What's that?
Less dangerous.
Let's see here. Quote, "The worry is not about Biden, but more about Trump or other future Trump-like presidents," said Stephen Young, who advocates on the dangers of nuclear weapons for the Union of Concerned Scientists. "No one person should have this ability to kill tens or hundreds of millions in less than an hour. It's simply too much power." Now, I've actually I've seen one of the YouTubers I like for other kind of fun sciencey stuff. He has spoken out several. His main channel isn't about nuke stuff, but he will bring it up from time to time because it's something that he feels passionately about. But he is in support of this Union of Concerned Scientists, and I watched one of his videos where he really, really went in depth about like what it is this group's trying to do, what it is that he believes, and I was really baffled by it. So his ending scenario, his ending kind of conclusion to it was a scenario in which currently if Russia or China decides they want to send nukes our way, while the nukes are on their way here, alarms go off, and then we have the option to press buttons and send a return volley of nukes, knowing that we can get them off the ground before the incoming nukes hit. But by the time our nukes hit, we've probably been wiped out by the nukes that were incoming. And eventually our nukes that were launched will get over to their side and they will also die too. And he actually said his preference was that if we have incoming nukes that we shouldn't launch because we should just allow the incoming nukes to come in and we should minimize the deaths with us and not create any more. And I see if you believe in kind of the utilitarian idea that, yes, you've saved more lives by not retaliating, but the entire point of us having weapons pointed towards them and being ready to fire at a moment's notice is that thing that we have set up that prevents the nukes from coming in, because they know that if they try to nuke us, we'll nuke them back. They don't fire. Same reason why we don't fire. We weren't just going to send a nuke at somebody because we know that there'll be nukes incoming. It's called mutually assured destruction, and that is what keeps everybody from launching nukes at each other. It is at its core, it's really a prisoner's dilemma problem, which is very well understood in psychology. It's one of the older kind of thought experiments in psychology. And I don't think it's great that this is what we are set up on, that everybody is just surviving on the threat that, we don't want to nuke everybody today. I don't disagree with it, that's kind of a bad way to live our lives, but there is no alternative. There is no putting the bomb back in the box. There is no alternative. Right. If we could roll back the clock and not invent it, then I would say, okay. But the idea that everybody is going to de-arm is completely unreasonable. It is not going to happen in our lifetimes. If it did, I'm more than happy to be proven wrong. But the idea that we should just allow countries like China, Iran, Russia, just say, well, you know what, if you guys nuke us, you know what, you guys won that one. We aren't going to retaliate. No, the whole thing that keeps them from nuking us is that we have nukes sent in the other direction.
The whole thing that stops them from invading other countries is the fact that we could be in a conflict with them, that we would be a barrier, and that they won't push that barrier because they know that it could result in nuclear war. It actually creates more peaceful nations than because of us having the ability to respond. Yeah. Now, I also want to point out that you're absolutely right about nuclear deterrence and how that works. But a lot of the articles about this are completely misunderstanding or do not understand at all how the nuclear launch system works. But I'll tell you this: the president cannot unilaterally fire without a whole bunch of people and time between the instructions and the actual launch. You'd have to have a whole lot of people willing to make sure that thing happens, a lot of people willing to follow crazy, unlawful orders, and nukes aren't sitting ready to fire. You know what the DEFCON system is? Okay, people think that the president can fire nukes. He fucking can't. So, no. If Trump went off his rocker and said, you know what, I'm going to nuke North Korea, he couldn't. They are assuming there's no checks and balances on this power that would make it more reasonable. And they're basing it off of you not understanding how it works. And I can't tell you. But trust me, we're not so fucking stupid to give one person the ability to destroy the entire world.
Well, yeah, the nuclear football is more like a fancy email system, right? So the nuclear football's there. They pop it open, they put the codes in, they push the button, and they send a target. And that really is just sending a fancy communique to the military, which then routes it to the people that are sitting at the launch stations or in the subs or on the Jewish satellites. And then they're the ones that are really pushing the buttons.
You have to tell about the Jewish satellites. It was a tri, now it's a quadad. What's the word for four?
A what?
It was a
triad.
Yeah.
Well, the come on, you know that triad's a myth. So the nuclear triad is air, land, and sea. That we can launch a nuke from air, land, and sea, and those are always. They are ready to go regardless of the DEFCON dire. I mean, not all of them are ready to go, but some of them are still ready to go within moments.
There's degrees of ready to go.
Yeah, but the spin-up cycle on them's not forever. I mean, if Trump had decided he wanted to nuke North Korea, I mean, you're talking about 30 minutes max before there's a bomb there.
So there's one thing that gives us the ability to be more prepared is we are constantly watching every country who has nuclear missiles. We watch their launch sites and where we believe they have nukes.
Yeah.
So if there's any kind of indication, we move up the DEFCON level, right?
Yeah.
So we're just as prepared as they are.
Yeah, but I think that there's some exotics out there that maybe add a fourth or a fifth branch onto that. I think the idea that we don't have something in space or low Earth orbit, I would think that'd be stupid if we didn't. But that's just a theory.
For you to speculate. So
that's just a theory. Conspiracy. Wait, that's the wrong channel.
So I do want to point out though that the technology for nukes has changed a lot. So tactics is also changed.
Yeah, but the launch system for the nukes has not. They still run a lot of the launch systems on like 20-inch floppy disks.
Sure. So fucking sad.
Yeah, they're terrifyingly out of date, but they're also unhackable. And you and I have talked about this offline before that the military was very vulnerable and compromised to things like the SolarWinds hack and Google deciding that they didn't want to work with you guys, and possibly Microsoft deciding that they didn't want to host certain government services anymore. Yeah, all these issues. And the nuke system is actually a good example of what I think the entire military should have gone into. It's too late now, but I mean, 30 years ago, they could have made the choice. You guys may remember a decade ago, it used to be this thing that MacBooks can't get viruses. It was only a Windows thing. Well, the reason why was because MacBooks used a different processor than Windows-based ones did. The instruction set in the silicon was different, and Apple didn't have a lot of market share, so nobody wrote viruses that ran on those types of processors. But now, as Apple gained more market share, people write viruses for them now. But what the military could have done was they could have made their own proprietary processor brand, and then nobody would have known how to write viruses for it or how to infiltrate it. And the nukes, the legacy nuclear system is kind of like that, where it's all based on this old technology back when it was the ARPANET, that kind of stuff, and everybody was just you plug in whatever in to get the computer to work, and they're nothing like modern computers, but you can't write viruses for them. And one of the reasons why they haven't upgraded a lot of these systems is because they can't conceive of a way of upgrading them to modern technology without having them be vulnerable to intrusion. But because they're on these literally just a step after vacuum tube type computers, they're really unhackable, just in the sense that you can't get into them in the same way that you would today.
So in response to Voracious Blackston, it's not they should have stayed low tech. They should have gone their own tech.
Yes, so that's what I'm saying. Develop your own technology standard. They should not have open sourced the internet. They should have left it their own standard and created an open source internet for the civilian community. They should not have bought. They should not be buying processors made by Chinese companies in God knows where. This is very, very not good direction, and they could have gone a different direction 30 years ago, but now it's too late.
Also, I want to talk about the impact of moving this nuclear decision to respond to Congress. Now, what is the purpose of Congress in the grand scheme of our democracy? It is required to make changes to our country slow. It is meant to be an impediment to change, where it requires so much consensus that you cannot have giant swings in political differences of how the government's being led, as big as it could be in other countries, where you have a different leader, and then the country is vastly differently led, and it's chaotic, right? Yeah. So it is meant to be an impediment to change, and that also makes it slow in decision-making. And because of that, it would make it impossible to respond to a nuclear threat if it required them to okay it.
Well, there is a place for Congress in the Constitution that allows them to. It gives them the ability to declare war, right? So the president can't unilaterally go to war, but it does not provide for them the ability to select certain tactics once we are at war. That is for the president. And I would consider launching a nuke to be a tactic. That is not now. If Congress wants to say, You can't launch nukes at countries that we're not at war with unless they are firing first. If you want to pass a law or an amendment like that, you know what? Put up as an amendment. Let's see if the states want it. We'll let them go through that process. But specifically being able to decide on a particular tactic, that is not the place for Congress. The place for Congress is to approve war and to fund it. It is the president's job to execute the war and to be the tactician for it. That's why he's the commander-in-chief. And what this really would open the door for is if you're just looking at launching a nuke as a tactic, right? And so Congress says, well, we want to take over the decision about this tactic. What would prevent them? What's the kind of stop mechanism? What's the braking mechanism that would stop them from saying, well, other tactics, we want to have decisions on those. Cyber warfare is kind of, people call that, an internet nuke. Well, why doesn't Congress get to take over the decisions about cyber warfare? Why shouldn't Congress, drones are a really new technology. Why shouldn't Congress have the ability to have decisions about drone tactics? When we have, potentially Jewish space lasers in the arsenal, why shouldn't Congress get a say in whether or not we're using those? As soon as you open the door on one tactic, there is no brakes. It opens up the door for every tactic, and then every tactic will potentially eventually be held by Congress. If Congress is successful with this, over the course of the next century, you will see nearly every military tactic be shuffled over to Congress.
And all this is a movement to take the authority and power of the presidency and the administration and move it more towards Congress, which, by the way, the administration has already given up a lot of its authority to Congress. And what this does is it allows someone who was elected because they had the same qualifications as the glass of water with a D on it in California, and gives someone in that one state, that one representative of someone in that state, the power of the presidency. Or what should have been the president's power, is insane.
Yes. All right. Anything else on that?
No, I think we definitely killed that topic.
Okay. Can you go? I'm remembering that Infidel gave $20 a little while ago, and I can't remember what it is that he said. Because I guess I don't have that logged in for my stream.
We did say it though.
Did we? Okay, I couldn't remember if we said it or not. All right, we're good then.
I remember the word was pronounced oddly by the
That is okay, correct. Yeah. All right, I just want to make sure we didn't miss that because the apparently I can't see the feed right now. I'll have to fix it after the stream. Okay. Alrighty, so our next story.
Knee pads.
What's that?
Oh, just reading the chat.
Oh, okay. Who's getting knee pads?
Nancy Pelosi, which is just horrifying. I'm sorry.
God. Jesus. Okay. All right. So our next story is about a race hoax. Oh my gosh. There's never race hoaxes, Dyer, except for all of them. Okay. So this is coming from the New York Times, which had a very interesting take on this story. Starting off with their title. So from the New York Times. Inside a battle over race, class, and power at Smith College. I really want to be a stadium announcer for like New York Times titles. It's great. A student said that she was racially profiled while eating in a college dorm. An investigation found no evidence of bias, but the incident will not fade away. I wonder why. All right, so Northampton, Massachusetts. In midsummer of 2018, Ayumuyu Konieto, wow, that is a name, a black student at Smith College, recounted a distressing American tale. She was eating lunch in a dorm lounge when a janitor and a campus police officer walked over and asked her what she was doing there. The officer...
Dude, this is an American tale. This represents what happens often in America. This is Americana. Come on.
Apparently. The officer, who could have been carrying a lethal weapon, left her in, quote, meltdown. Miss Canuti wrote on Facebook, saying that this encounter continued a year-long pattern of harassment at Smith College.
Translation: a police officer came up to her, asked her a friendly question, and she freaked out on the officer. Anyways, fact check. Smith College campus security do not, I repeat, do not have lethal armaments. No guns, no battle axes, no lethal armaments.
Definitely not any Jewish space lasers. All I did was be black, Miss Canute wrote. Quote, it's outrageous that some people question my being at Smith College and my existence overall as a woman of color. Yes, so when somebody comes up and says, hey, what's up? What are you doing? And then you infer that by like, what are you doing? They mean like, why are you, as a person of your race, deigning to be in their presence? Like, why do you even exist? If that's what you think that they meant, you're a psychopath. Like, you actually should. Yeah, you should actually be taking medicine. I'm not kidding. Like, you're not supposed to make psychological whatever from abroad. Okay, I don't care. I am saying that I don't know what is wrong with her, but she should be on medicine. If somebody asks her,
I think she should seek help immediately.
Yeah, if somebody is just asking her like, "Hey, what's up? What are you doing?" and you take that to mean that they're questioning why you even exist. That is
a debilitating level of stupid.
Yes. I mean that is paranoia at the highest level. All right. So let's see here. So yes, all I did was be black. It's outrageous. So some people would question my being at Smith College and my existence as an overall woman of color.
You didn't say that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Like Dyer, like I've like when we've called, like, you know, be like, hey, like how's your day? Like what are you doing? I'll be like, hey, like what are you doing? Like when I asked you like what did you do today? It's not like I'm not questioning your right to exist in the same universe as me. I was asking like, what did you do?
Like, oh, that's a relief. I took it the other way.
Yeah.
I thought you were questioning
like
the fact that I exist and that I should probably not.
Yeah, like what are you doing today? Like what I really mean is like what are you doing existing in today?
Yeah, fuck you, Fox. How dare you question my right to exist?
Yes, you should not exist in the same. I don't want to share the same space time as you. All right, so the college's president, Kathleen McCarthy, offered profuse apologies and put the janitor on paid leave.
Don't apologize. Don't apologize to people.
This painful incident reminds us of the ongoing legacy of racism and bias, the president wrote, quote, in which people of color are targeted while simply going about the business of their ordinary lives. All right, so the New York Times, the Washington Post, and CNN all picked up on the story of a young female student harassed by white workers. The American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, which took the student's case, said that she was profiled for, quote, eating while black, capital B, which I think is actually probably not what their quote was, because I think that this was before it was decided that they were going to capitalize black. So I think this is actually a misquote. So I think at the time they would have just said black with a lowercase b. I'd have to fact check that, though. I'm speculating.
To, as a nation, stop giving legitimacy to someone who has feelings that are completely contradictory to reality. That's something wrong with them. We don't warp reality around someone's warped perceptions of reality and their crazy feelings based off of not real things. You don't apologize when you've done nothing wrong. This little lady was being a bitch to this officer. She was the one who's wrong, and she should be the one apologizing. And if she can't get right, she should get out of the school because she's being a disruption. You don't apologize because someone is being a disruption, that they're doing something wrong. It is insane to me that they've kowtowed. These cowards are so scared that they're willing to accept someone's premise that's based on a complete falsehood. Anyways, less attention was paid 3 months later when a law firm hired by Smith College investigated the episode, found no persuasive evidence of bias. Also could be phrased as no bias, no evidence whatsoever, and lots of evidence against it. Miss Canute was determined to have eaten in a deserted dorm that had been closed for the summer. Thus, it was strange for her to be there. The janitor had been encouraged to notify security if he saw unauthorized people there. Anybody, people of any skin color, because there was a closed building with someone in it when there should be no one there, because it was closed. She was profiled for being a person who trespassed. The officer, like all campus police, was unarmed. thus was not carrying a lethal armament.
Yes. And I'm guessing the police wouldn't have had to get involved if she probably hadn't been lippy with the janitor. Although I think if I'm remembering correctly, the janitor, I don't think he even talked to her. I think he was told just talk to the campus security and like they'll deal with it because you don't know what's going on. Like you got abandoned buildings or buildings that are potentially shut down. Typically, if people are going in there, they're probably going in there for something nefarious. So they don't want to get caught for it. You know, you see this a lot in the inner cities where like you have an abandoned building. It's a great place for crime to take place. If you're on campus, you know, weird stuff happens on campuses, drug deals and stuff like that. I think an abandoned building would be great place to do that. So if you have an abandoned building, it makes sense that the campus would say, hey, you know, why don't we keep a particular eye on this because abandoned buildings are really attractive to people trying to do nefarious things. Now, that's not to say that every person in there is going to be up to anything specifically nefarious, but it is a possibility. That's why the university, you know, it was closed for a reason. They didn't want people in it. It's almost like they put up a wall. All right, so Smith College officials emphasized, quote, reconciliation and healing after the incident. That didn't happen. In the months to come, they announced a raft of anti-bias training for all staff, a revamped, more sensitive campus police force, and the creation of dormitories, as demanded by Miss Conyunet and her ACLU lawyer, set aside for black students and other students of color.
Segregation was their answer to racism that didn't exist.
Yes.
We created racism in response to a lack of racism. Great job. You're going the wrong direction. Holy cow.
Presumably they have
money.
black water fountains in there too.
I guess so. Think of all the time and money wasted because they were so fucking cowardly and scared to actually hold someone to reality and the truth. That is ridiculous. And their answer to this girl being completely insane was to be racist to solve racism. Segregation does not result in less racism. It results in more. It creates the othering effect.
Yep.
All right, so is it my turn?
Yeah, it is. Hold on a second. Molakan on YouTube. No, what I meant was that the military internet should be run on. They should have their own kind of sub network that is run on their own infrastructure that isn't directly tied into the main internet. I think they have that to an extent.
SIPRNet.
Huh?
So they have something called SIPRNet. That is the secret-only network, but I think you're referring to something different.
Yeah, you know, I mean that there should be like full on, like all of the military infrastructure should be on a separate technology layer. Like all of the computers for the military should be running on their own processor instructions, not ones that are available.
Even if a programming language would be better.
Yeah. Well, that would be based on the microcode and the processor, and the network that they're running off of. Like one of the reasons why you can't have regular why it's dangerous for regular computers even on the military networks is because they're tied right into the internet. I mean, yes, they are protected, but if you're trying to hack into the military and you hit a router that was using a fundamentally different kind of programming language, then you wouldn't be able to get past it. There would be a block there. So that's kind of what I mean. I'm not saying the military should never have given over the internet to civilians. I'm just saying that as they did that, they should have retained their own special stuff so that it wasn't mixed in with civilian stuff and it wasn't then available to be hacked decades later. Anyways, so Dyer. So after they set aside, after they decided that, you know, her story was fake, and then they kowtowed to her demands anyways. What did they do then, Dyer?
But they did not offer any public apology or amends to the workers whose lives were gravely disrupted by the students' lies and accusations.
Yeah, so they ended up they fired / put on permanent suspension. Yeah, they didn't. Why would you do that? Oh, Slowpoke says, if it wasn't for the fact that I know sane black people, I'd give these people what they want. They're gonna be fucking annoying.
No. Crazy people like this should never change your mind about an entire group of very different people.
Yeah, but we
right?
did have a system for segregating people like her, and by people like her, I mean people who have no ability to perceive reality. They are insane. They are clinically insane, psycho, paranoid schizophrenic. That is what she is. She's a paranoid schizophrenic. She's not perceiving reality, and she's paranoid that people that don't even exist are out to get her. We used to have a place that we would send them to segregate them from society. They were called insane asylums. That's where she belongs.
It's very possible she's been programmed this way as well. Right?
Well, so you've got the two options. You've got the victim economy, where her creating the story gets her a benefit. Obviously, she got a benefit in getting her policies enacted at the school. She got national attention. She's probably going to be getting national attention for quite a while. She'll probably have to be able to sell books off of this, probably be able to get jobs off of this. She probably made some money off of it with GoFundMes and stuff like that, just because she came up with a victim narrative. It's the same thing as like Jussie Smollett or Bubba Wallace, all them. So it's either that where she's just lying to make money because that's the way the economy works now, or she is actually a paranoid schizophrenic. It is definitely one of the two. I think more likely she's probably grifting for money, but I think that to make a deterrent for people doing this for money, I think that we should treat it as paranoid schizophrenia with all of the quote-unquote treatment that implies.
Why would you do that?
I would do that because no. I just said I know she's not all of a single group of people because I personally know better people, but not my fault. I know she's not the first or last of her kind. No, I mean, if there's people who want to be segregated, they can go ahead and segregate themselves. I don't think that we should listen to them or enact their policies of broader segregation of people who didn't ask to be segregated. How about that?
Right. I don't think the schools and governments should bow to their whims and help enforce their segregation, because they've now made an institution that is funded by the government enforce segregation on a populace. That is insane.
Well, and also, I mean, you wonder, too, is like, well, she's probably not the only person who thinks that blacks should have their own dorms and their own water fountains and bathrooms and stuff like that. There's a different group of people who also believe that, but I think if that other group of people were to ask that all of the black people in their college be sent off to their own little area, I would think that their request would not be handled so...
There's a meme of a white nationalist listening to a black nationalist asking for or demanding all these different things, and it's all the things that the white nationalists also want.
Yeah.
They're like silently happy about it.
Yeah. So the New York Times does go on for quite a bit that we're not going to read, but this is kind of the key paragraph here that is getting a lot of people up in arms and kind of reminiscent of or representative of the whole article. So this is how the New York Times puts it. This is a tale of how race, class, and power collided at the elite 145-year-old liberal arts college, where tuition, room and board top $78,000 per year, and where the employees who keep the school running often come from working-class enclaves beyond the school's elegant wrought iron gates. The story highlights the tensions between the students' deeply felt sense of personal truth and the facts that are at odds with it. I'm going to read that last sentence again. This story highlights the tension between a student's deeply felt sense of personal truth and the facts that are at odds with it.
Fox?
Yes.
I give zero shits about her personal truth, because if her personal truth isn't just the truth, then it is a lie.
We choose truth over facts. That's a Biden quote.
She was morally accurate, not factually accurate.
Well, so here's the fun part: is that this is a story about race, class, and power, in the sense that this girl is a very rich, very privileged black girl abusing her poor white servants. There's much more explained by class. You kind of watch antebellum era movies, books, You kind of read about what the kings and queens in Europe did with their servants, or just different empires throughout history. It's kind of almost like a trope that the help. You treat the help poorly. Everything's kind of their fault. Something goes wrong, and you got the wife, beating or hitting one of the slaves or the servants because they broke a glass or something. And this is very reminiscent of that, where you've got this, ignoring her race, somebody who can afford a $78,000 a year college, and she has servants walking around her making. They're probably making less than half of what she's paying to be there per year. And, she decided that she wanted to throw a temper tantrum at their expense. You hear stories about this from, again, more of the imperial era or the slave era, where you had, something would go wrong in the family, somebody would be upset, and they would just take it out on the servants or the slaves. Why did this cotton farmer beat one of his slaves? Well, his wife pissed him off. Or why did his wife beat one of them? Well, her husband pissed him off. Why did the king and queen, why did one of them beat their slaves to death? Well, because the other one pissed him off. And is very classic trope of elite royalty, privileged people having a servant class which they commit violence against and destroy them simply for the pleasure of doing it.
And the only honest description of what happened here is that a very wealthy, privileged girl was victimizing a working class person who was just doing their jobs, had done nothing wrong. That's what happened here. That's the honest rendition of this story. And what they did by legitimizing her behavior, by rewarding her behavior, is sickening, and it will encourage more of this. She is the victimizer in this story, and they're treating her like the victim.
Yeah, and we say this all the time. Every time we do a hate hoax segment, is if these were real, if there was real instances of this, we would have seen them, because every time something like this is said to have happened, the media makes it an international sensation, and every time it's proven to be false. If there was real ones, you would imagine that at some point there would be these international sensations and they just never get debunked. But that's not the case. That is not the case. We don't see any of these international sensations that stick. People want to say, oh, well, that was the George Floyd one or the Jacob Blake one, but we've debunked that enough times on this show. I don't think we need to do it again. But these all end up being not what the real narrative is. Ben Shapiro puts it that the left's appetite for their demand for white nationalism, their demand for it exceeds the supply. The left has this giant demand that they really want to see white nationalist violence against minorities, but for whatever reason, America just isn't willing to supply that much. We're just not racist enough to meet the demand for racist events.
And at the same time, we have a bunch of inner city youths, often black, in New York and other Democrat-controlled cities that are committing a lot of hate crimes against Jews in those cities, and the media refuse to cover that. And that is actually happening.
Just use those space lasers to be fine. All right. Next story. All right. Okay. So, oh wait, I'm not on the slides. There we go. All right. So, Joe Biden, he wants to make a new credit bureau. That's interesting. Yeah, I don't really like the current credit bureaus. There's a lot of problems with them. I don't think that that's fixed by Joe Biden making a new one. But let's look into see what he's got here. So, all right. So Joe Biden. Let's see here. I gotta jump to a segment here. It's a little bit down here. So this is Joe Biden's website. We are in the racial economic equity section, which does go on for a bit, as you guys can see here. Still going. I know it's in here somewhere. Hope I didn't scroll past it. Gosh, there's so much stuff here. You'd think that America was really unequitable with how much stuff Joe Biden has to fix. There it is. Okay.
Be gone from me, you soy boy beta cock. The transaction is complete.
Maybe we should bring back insane asylums but call them free government housing to trick the Democrats into funding them. Then trick these nutbags into committing themselves by telling them they've won lifetime housing as a reward for reparations.
It sounds like it's not going to pass an ethics committee, but I don't know. They like to kill babies, so maybe it would. All right. Thank you very much for the $10, Triumvirate, and also thanks for the $4 earlier there, Slowpoke. Much appreciated. All right. So, your audio dropped out. Let me try to rectify that here real quick. While you read this section, because this is your section to read. So you read that. I'll fix the audio. Oh, what do you mean you don't hear me? Can chat hear me?
Now you're back.
I think it's you, Dyer.
I can hear you now.
Oh, all right. Well,
it's probably me. Yes.
Okay, so as you guys saw, I was scrolling quite a bit there, but I didn't scroll past it. There was just, it's very far down because Joe Biden has a lot to say on racial equity, apparently. All right, Dyer, what does Joe Biden want to do with the credit reporting agencies?
Calls for more accurate, non-discriminatory, inclusive credit scoring, and create a public credit reporting agency.
Ooh.
Wow, that's scary.
That's fun.
Being able to obtain an accurate credit report and score is a critical step for home ownership. That's funny. I thought we were going to own nothing and be happy about it. Also, their term of accurate is not going to be based on merits, but based on some of your other characteristics that don't determine whether or not you can pay back a loan. But today, credit scoring and reports, which are issued by just 3 large private companies, are rife with problems, he says. They often contain errors. I'm sure because the government is blameless and never has errors, that won't happen. Which is important to highlight because if the government did it, there would be no errors because the government never makes errors.
My favorite part of writing scripts is when I include a joke that I know Dyer would make anyways, and he will go off script, make the joke, come back to the script, and realize I already wrote the exact same joke 6 hours ago, and then have to say it again. It's my favorite part.
He knows me so well. He writes them the way I say them, or would say them. And yet, I still do it myself.
Every time.
So one of us has got to learn one point. One day. They leave many credit invisible due to the sources used to generate credit scores. This is actually true and is a problem. I am not confident that it's a problem that the government can actually solve, though. I think that it is, since it is a real problem, but if they try to solve it, they'll make it far worse. They contribute to racial disparities, says Biden. But do they? Do they really? That's kind of hard to believe, being that it's against the law to include race in any of those calculations. But it looks like racial disparities on ink because there's not equal outcomes. But if it's not being considered as a deciding factor, but there's
this is a link. God, you're so illiterate.
What?
It says it's a link. Just read what I wrote. We're getting into a funny bit, and you're ruining it. So, Joe Biden said that there's racial disparities. Do they really contribute to racial disparities? If we look here on the website, racial disparities is underlined. Maybe it's a link. Maybe we should click on it and see where it goes. I bet you it'll tell us more about these racial disparities caused by the credit reporting agencies. What do you think, Dyer? What do you think they got here? Oh, it took us to a study. Well, what does the study say? So the study is very interesting. So it's from May 2016. And this is Joe Biden's proof that credit reporting bureaus cause racial disparities. So let's see here. So let's read the first few paragraphs here. So credit reports. This is a study from May 2016. Credit reports and scores reflect a stunning racial disparities. Credit reporting and credit scoring are supposedly entirely objective with no room for flawed tools such as human judgment and the biases built into human minds. Yet for the past 2 decades, studies have shown that African Americans and Latino communities have lower credit scores as a group than whites and Asians when the data is available. See studies on page 5. Why do all these studies show racial disparities in credit scores? It is because communities of color are somehow less responsible? Are the cultures different? No, because as we know, there is no difference between white culture. They're saying that there is no cultural difference between whites and blacks and Latinos. Okay, that's what you're going to say. No, these are not explanations. What's that?
Rap music. I never heard of it before.
Yeah. These are not explanations. Instead, the explanation lies in the very nature of judging humans based on past behaviors. Because, you can't judge the future by watching somebody's past behaviors. Nope, that's not how things work ever. Let's see here. So by doing this, by judging people by the only thing that you can judge them by, what they've done in the past. By doing so, credit scores necessarily incorporate elements of past inequality. Well, what are the elements of past inequality that they're incorporating? Communities of color have less income than white Americans. African Americans earn only 64 cents for every dollar earned by whites. What? And Latinos earn only 73 cents. Oh, no way. Okay, so we're going to follow a link trail here. It's just like Wikipedia. So Joe Biden, he said that there's racial inequities in the credit scoring system, and he linked to this research paper to prove it. And then this research paper is linking to something else to prove that African Americans make only 64 cents on the dollar and Latinos only make 73 cents on the dollar to whites. They're linking to another source. Should we click on it, Dyer? Should we click on it?
Let's click it.
We're sorry, the page you were looking for cannot be found. Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! So we can't find. There actually is the proof that African Americans make less than whites cannot be found. Oh no! Well, there's another one down here. Let's hear. But the disparity in assets is even more stunning. African American families own less than 7 cents for every dollar in wealth owned by white families. Well, they got another link here. Should we click on it?
Huge disparity, hypothetically.
Yeah. They only own 7 cents to every dollar. Every dollar earned by whites. Should we click on their link to the proof of this?
Sure.
Page not found. Oh no.
Yeah,
oh no. Okay, so actually what we've just seen here is that now that we've seen that racial disparities in credit reports literally cannot be found, we went to the source for where Joe Biden is saying that there is racial disparities in credit reporting because of this document that is referencing other stuff. You literally can't find the references. Like, they don't exist. They link to pages that do not exist. So is there evidence that African Americans make 64 cents on the dollar to whites? No, there's no evidence. We looked for it. It cannot be found. This is Joe Biden's own website. So if you guys look at the path we went to, this is Joe Biden's website. He linked to this document, and then where it says that communities of color have less income, you click on it, and it doesn't exist. So Joe Biden, I would think, now, could we go out and maybe find more research on this? Maybe. But Joe Biden is using this. He's putting this up as his citation, as his justification for his reason for wanting to do this. So now that we've seen that racial disparities in credit reports literally cannot be found, do we think that's going to slow Joe down? Of course not. We can't let little things like facts get in the way of expanding government. So what's Joe Biden going to do about this problem that does not exist and cannot be found anywhere in scientific literature?
Okay. Well, Biden will create a new public credit reporting and scoring division within the Customer Financial Protection Bureau to provide customers with a government option that seeks to minimize racial disparities, which, as we just saw, do not exist, at least not in the way this is in the article there.
They cannot be found.
We tried.
We looked where Joe Biden said here are racial disparities. We looked, and we literally could not find them. That's what it said when I clicked on them. Page could not be found. So
we both know that there is disparities because there are more black people on average are in a lower income bracket, but that's not those numbers there look ridiculous. I don't think that's accurate at all. Anyways, for example, by ensuring the algorithms used for credit scoring don't have a discriminatory impact, and by accepting non-traditional sources of data like rental history and utility bills as established credit. Using rental history and bill payments in your credit history is a good idea too, but I'm still not seeing how forming an entirely new government agency is the way to get the idea implemented. As a first step to more broad-based support for these scores, says Biden, Biden will call on federal housing problems to accept these scores programs to accept these scores in their financial assessments and underwriting requirements. So you can now use your government credit score to get a government loan to live in government housing. How patriotic will you will surely be feeling. Now, I have a problem here. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, completely misunderstanding this, but earlier they said that the racism that was causing disparity was that black people are making less money on average than white people, right? And that's preventing them from having a good credit score. Is that the factual statement?
That's what the links are trying to show us.
So now your credit score is based off of how you actually have a record of paying your payments in full on time, and your credit limit is more affected by how much money you have, right? You paid, right?
Yeah, but if you just have more money, you're gonna have a higher credit score. It's not set up well for people who don't have a lot of money, because if you have, let's say you got a credit card with a $2,000 limit, if that's all the more limit you can get because you're not making a lot of money, and maybe you make $30,000 a year, you're probably not gonna be able to get anything more than like a $1,000 or $2,000 credit limit. But you're also gonna be using up a lot of that throughout the month. So like, let's say you pay it off at the end of each month, that's fine, but you're still gonna have a rolling balance of like $1,000, which is gonna be 50% utilization on your credit, which is going to sandbag your credit score. Whereas somebody who makes more money, they're going to be able to afford or be able to request higher limits on their credit cards, and maybe they're still having that same $1,000 rolling over each month, but they've got a credit limit of $50,000, and so it's not going to hit their credit score as hard. Yeah,
right,
the credit system really does suck. It is not good, but the way to fix it is not by creating a new government agency.
I agree, and they're trusting you with more money, so you have the same percentage limit, but you're able to utilize more money. But if that still comes down to individual decisions, that person could, with a very low credit limit, choose to only use, following the same rules, a small amount of credit and just not use credit for everything, right? It's still your credit score is based off your decisions and how you used your credit, right? It's not a bias there, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, it's not based off of really your decision. I mean, to an extent it is, but it's really more based off of like, what do your decisions say about you as somebody who's able to pay back the credit? Unfortunately, it's just kind of by definition, people who have more money are more likely to pay back their credit, so they're better to lend to. If I
you
was,
could have a black person who has lots of money though.
Yeah, exactly.
They can pay back.
Exactly. So it's not about race. It's much more about a class issue. It is a big problem for class. I don't think that's a problem for race. I think if you looked at it through a class lens, you would see that a poor white person and a poor black person will have an equally difficult time getting credit, and a rich black person and a rich white person will have an equally easy time of getting credit.
Even in his argumentation, he hasn't set up an actual example of how there is a racial bias. Only that he's using collectivism to say that because the entire group is trending towards a less than this other group, but also white people tend to have lower credit than Asians. So is it also racist against white people?
Possibly. Yeah. So I've been I think we've all been hearing a lot of talk about this for quite some time now. Biden's been talking about having some kind of, really what he's talking about doing is kind of creating the first steps towards a social credit system, right? So he wants to make a credit bureau that is designed to take into account your race. He's saying that the current credit system is discriminatory because it doesn't take into account your race, and to make it less discriminatory, he wants to make sure that your race is featured in the credit score, which is classic Biden stuff. But a lot of what they're talking about in this is what the left will refer to is historic inequity. That's brought up a lot, is these historic inequalities and intergenerational wealth. Every time the go-to for the left is redlining and blockbusting. We redlined and blockbusted for 100 years, and like that's caused intergenerational wealth. Minorities don't have it, and white people do, and so on and so on. All right, sure. We'll accept that for a second. So let's say that those definitely cause disparities in the ability of certain families to generate wealth throughout time. If you were a family that wasn't allowed to live in a certain area, that certainly affected you up and through the future. In my family, for instance, when my grandparents first got married, they had a really hard time finding a house because they weren't white enough to live in a white neighborhood, and they were too white to live in a non-white neighborhood. They weren't allowed in either place. It was pretty horrible. And I'm sure that kind of history is common to all kinds of Americans. One of the more popular racial makeups now is mixed race. So you go, a lot of people now, you go back, you're going to have family stories like that if you go back a few generations. But what happened with my grandparents, it was a sad story. I got to hear about how they overcame it and all that stuff. But them 60 years ago having a hard time finding a house, that had really fuck all to do with if I was a lazy piece of shit in high school or not, or if I took an overpriced loan for college, or how I applied and interviewed for a job. What did affect those things? It wasn't that racial disparity 50, 60, 70 years ago. What really had a big impact on what I did in high school, what I went to college for, and how I applied for a job was the subprime lending crisis. So all throughout the 2000s, the government forced banks to lend to people with bad credit. They called it subprime mortgages. Mostly this affected minorities, where you had people that were not great credit bids, but the government said, nope, you got to lend to them anyways. You got to lend to them at low rates. And that's what they called subprime, because these were subprime. These were sub-premium, sub-ideal people to lend to. That's why they called them subprime lending. So this really blew up the housing market. We all know. I think all you guys are probably, if you listen to the show, you probably lived through the 2008 crisis, right? So this subprime throughout the 2000s, this blew up the housing market and took down the rest of the economy with it. Subprime lending was the way that we were trying to rectify this intergenerational wealth disparity. It was said, okay, well, you know what, minorities, they had a really bad bid the last century. Why don't we force banks to lend to them so that they can have access to easy credit too? Because they were saying the same thing back in the 2000s. Well, the credit scores don't represent minorities very well because of this intergenerational wealth issue. Now, whether or not that's true, that is the reasoning why the subprime lending happened. And so there was an attempt to rectify this. So Joe Biden's not treading new ground here. He's treading very, very old ground. And I think we know what happened the last time we tried this with subprime lending, is obviously it led to the 2008 bubble and the great crash. And depending on your measure for subprime lending, it kind of did work. It absolutely evaporated the middle class, reaching all the way up into the top 10%, almost up into the 1%. It was a massive economic reset. It evaporated white wealth just as fast as it evaporated black and Hispanic wealth. It reshuffled everybody, and all of those historic inequities, all the cards got reshuffled on that. If you are on the ropes financially today, if your family is on the ropes financially in 2021, it has far, far more to do with the 2008 crash and the COVID recession than anything anything that happened before 2000. It's got far more to do with the 2008 crash than it has anything to do with intergenerational wealth buildup over the last 200 years. If you had a white family that had been, oil tycoons in the 1920s, and they were still making like gangbusters in the 90s, and then you had a black family who was just hitting real hard times all the way through civil rights era, and even after, hard time getting a house, hard time getting lending. Both those families enter into the 2000s, and all of a sudden that minority family gets access to subprime lending credit so they can get their house, and then 2008 hits. The crash happens, and both families are dropped back down to zero. So everybody's equal now because we all went through the crash and everybody lost money. Really, the only people that weren't affected by the 2008 crash were, again, your top 10%, maybe up even a little bit higher. So we tried this already, and the idea that today they're saying, well, there's inequalities, and they're leading all the way back into these things that happened in the 1950s. There is nothing, there's very, very minuscule anything from the 1950s that has a bigger impact on a minority or a majority family today than what 2008 had. 2008 was such a severe event, and I would say the dot-com bubble was similar as well, but the 2008 event, that was such a severe reset on the economy. I really don't think that any kind of intergenerational wealth dating back to the early 1900s, I just can't imagine any of that affecting you now. If
it was marketed as an act of kindness, but
yes.
It was absolutely the opposite.
Yes. If you are poor now, today, that it is probably due to either the COVID recession or to the 2008 crash. So many people lost their jobs. Both races, or all the races. If you're wealthy now, it's possible that your family wasn't wealthy before that happened, or you found some way of clinging on to the economy. But that was just as likely if you were a minority as well. There was a lot of minorities that they were in a spot where during the crash they were able to hang on, and just hanging on for dear life while the economy crashed around you, that puts you up above all the other people that weren't able to hang on, all the people that lost their houses, all the people that lost their jobs. So we tried this, but I don't see how, if your family is struggling today financially, it has nothing to do with what happened in 1980, nothing to do with what happened in 1950, nothing to do with what happened in the 1609. So that is absolutely insane. We've had, since civil rights, we had in the 80s the gas crash. We had the dot-com bubble in the 90s, early 2000s. We had the 2008 crisis. We had COVID now. The idea, and we've also printed quintillions of dollars since then. Inflation is off the charts. Families that are poor today, it is absolutely related to all of those financial crashes that I told you about. It is not related to racial disparities from 100 years ago. That is just insane. That is the
Absolutely
elites.
true.
That is the elites mismanaging the economy on purpose, trying to say that it's for, like what you said, it was a kind and generous thing to do. Certainly a worthy attempt. Absolute failure, but trying to skip over that and say, well, it wasn't the elites' mismanagement of the economy that making families poor today. No. It was definitely the historic inequities from 100 years ago. Because if it's not the historic inequities from 100 years ago, that means that it is the fault of the elites mismanaging the economy. And they don't want to take responsibility for that. It's much easier for them to get votes for minorities. If minorities thought that they were poor because the Democrats mismanaged the economy for the last 30 years, they wouldn't be voting Democrat. The reason
they also don't want to be wealthy. They don't want the minorities to be wealthy because then they wouldn't feel like victims.
Exactly. And so it's much better for the Democrats to make sure the minorities, instead of thinking it's the Democrats' fault or just the elites in general, the Republicans are as bad in this as anybody else. It's much better for the elites to say, well, it's nothing to do with us. It's from 100 years ago. Yeah, it's their fault. It's like, we're just trying to help you. Like that's some pretty good scapegoating. If you can scapegoat somebody who's been dead for more than a generation, I mean, you're doing a pretty good job scapegoating that.
It's pretty impressive. Now, I want to point out that they're basically trying to institutionalize racism. They're trying to make a process that is built into the cake, baked into the cake, racism. They want to make the credit score partially dependent on your skin color, what score you get. And so the end result would be you'd have, let's say you have a white family and a black family, both of them making just $20K a year. They're very poor, right? That's just above or just below the poverty line, I think. Anyways, they would but then they assume they have the same habits with paying back their bills, right? Same responsibility with paying back their bills. The black family, under his plan, would get a higher credit score. Is that fair? They are essentially making the same right choices in the same conditions, but they're giving a advantage to one group because of their skin color. How is that not racism? And then also, let's talk about, again, how it is not kind to give higher levels of possible debt. When I say credit, it is also the availability of them having debt and interest they have to pay on said debt. So when you give someone who is less likely to be able to pay it back a large amount of debt, it's not kind to them. You're setting them up to fail.
Yep. I don't see. So we tried with subprime lending was, well, people with bad scores, why don't we lower the threshold and try and get it into the credit economy? We saw the disastrous results of that. This is an even worse attempt because this is going to not take into account really anything other than your skin color. Is kind of what the goal of this is. You know that's what the goal is going to be. This will be as bad as affirmative action for colleges. And it's going to be subprime 2.0, and it's going to have the same disastrous results. You're going to see if Joe Biden gets this through, you're going to see a new government credit reporting bureau that gives minorities outlandishly high scores. Those minorities will then pick up very large credit cards or mortgages or car loans or whatever that they won't be able to pay back. And then they're going to end up not paying them back. And then you're going to see the banks collapse again. You will see, because one of the reasons why the financial crisis of 2008 happened was because these subprime mortgages were crap. That's why they had to turn them into things that they could make money off of, like mortgage-backed securities, which it's the mortgage-backed securities that collapsed in 2008. But the only reason why they made the mortgage-backed securities is because the mortgages themselves were crap on their own, and they had to turn them into something else to try to make money off of them. At the end of the day, the banking system's awful, but at the end of the day, the banks are trying to make money, and that's why they made those. And then that turned into this giant casino, and then that's what collapsed the thing. So what will happen is that because Joe Biden's new credit bureau is going to be making credit available to people who can't pay it, the banks are going to have to play games with that credit, swapping it back and forth amongst themselves, trying to very hard to make money off of what they know is going to be a bad loan that somebody's going to default on. And you're going to have the same issue.
I bet there'll also be lots of Rachel Dolezals generated from this.
Well, I think I said this earlier in the summer, but you think where this goes, and you imagine what is going to happen when you have a white guy who's on tough times because the Democrats mismanaged their economy or whatever. He goes in the bank trying to refi his home or buy a home or start a small business or save his small business. And he really, really needs this loan. And they tell him no because he's the wrong skin color. You're really, really asking for people to get extremely radicalized very quickly. I won't say what I think he would do in that situation, but you can imagine what he would do when he came back to that bank after they told him, no, you can't have a loan because you're white. You are going to have Obama did his best to get America as racially divided as possible again. This will be if what Obama did was, setting the gasoline on fire, this is dumping napalm on it.
And they like to pretend that black people are being turned away from banks because they are black, and they are actually creating a situation where the exact same fantasy that they believe is going to actually happen.
Show me one time ever in the last 30 years that a black person has been turned away from a bank. I do not believe it. You've got this idea about blockbusting too, which is some people have been referring to blockbusting that's still going on today. What is blockbusting? I don't even know what it was. It's apparently it's this practice where somebody will a real estate developer will move in a black family into a neighborhood, trying to get all the white people to move out, and then they'll buy up all the property at really cheap and then sell it back to them really high. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that may have happened in the past. That does not happen.
No, they use riots now.
Yeah, that does not happen now. I do not believe for a second that you or anyone you know or anyone that you know that knows someone has ever moved out of their house because a black family moved into their neighborhood. That is absolutely unbelievable in the modern era. It just completely beggars belief. And one of the reasons why is because the way neighborhoods work has really changed in the modern era. I bet you can't even name 5 people that live on your street. Dire might, because he's a weirdo. But people don't care about their neighbors anymore. The blockbusting is not going on anymore. Black people getting denied at banks just because they're black, that's not going on anywhere. There is really, really stringent laws, thanks to the civil rights era, that prevent that from happening. And if it is happening, just like rape, if it's really happening, then file a police report and get some justice. Don't just bitch about it on Twitter that you made this stuff up.
It's also a crime to only accept someone for like a property to move into your property based off their race. It is a crime to consider that as a attribute.
And if you feel like that's happening to you, now that does happen with renters because a lot of people are renting. There's a lot of landlords and stuff like that. That is something that does happen on that where there is a racial disparity, but it is illegal to do it. If you think it's happening to you, there is federal offices that you can call, and they will do an investigation and look into it for you. But
here's an example. So I have a property that I'm going to be I rent out, right? And when I first was talking to the property management company, I wanted to rent to people in the military because this house was right, like you are touching the fence line of the base. It's right outside the base, and my reason was not because I don't like civilians, is because I wanted to allow subletting. So multiple young military people could rent the house at the same time and save them money, right? Mm-hmm. I wanted to help the new people to the military. And he's like, I can't do that. We can't even ask you can't ask them even that category. You can't ask them their race, gender, sex, and you can't ask them about their, any specific group like that. It has to be based off only their credit and their ability to pay.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're gonna have a real hard time even achieving some of these racial policies. Like if you're trying to be a racist today, it's really hard. There's not like if Dyer, obviously not racist to want military people, but you attempted to have only military people, and you've got to go through a real estate agency and a bank and all that stuff, and they're saying no, we have to assist you in this, and we're gonna say no, you can't do that. So there's a lot of things that have to break down before you're able to do this. So again, the idea that modern day inequities between the races has anything to do with racism, it just does not hold up. It has much more to do with rampant mismanagement of the economy, with the way banking systems work and the Fed and the crashes and all that stuff. Much more to do with it. Again, it's an often cited stat, but there's far more poor white people below the poverty line than there is black people. But for some reason, it's only a problem when there's black people under it. So, it's a problem, but it's much more related to mismanagement of the economy, not really related to racism.
Yep. Next story.
Alrighty. Last story. Best story. All right. So, COVID numbers are down, but apparently it's more dangerous than ever. Well, that's scary. All right, so COVID cases are down a lot lately, but that doesn't mean that the Dems aren't ready to give up power yet. In the UK, cases are down nearly 70% since the beginning of the year, and down about 66% in the US during that same time. We've also vaccinated about 73 million Americans, which is about 20% of the population, with at least the first dose of the 2-dose vaccines. And all of those doses were purchased by Donald J. Trump. And the ones that Biden ordered recently will not be shipped for another 2 to 4 months. So Biden could say all he wants that there was no plan for a vaccine when he got into office, but it's really just not true. All of those 73 million Americans that have been vaccinated so far, they can all thank Trump for buying those vaccines for them.
Yep.
Isn't that nice?
Yes. We are not scientists, but high vaccination rates, a lot of younger people who've already had COVID and recovered, and a quickly falling case count looks like we're hitting that magical herd immunity level. We're sure to see spikes from time to time in some places, but it would seem that we are in the downswing now, which is a good thing. So with all this good news, we turn to now Pope Fauci for guidance on what to expect next.
Some confusion about what that actually means for a person's
Fauci.
lifestyle after they are vaccinated. I'll give you an example. My parents have already gotten their second dose.
Oh, you're not hearing me, are you?
No.
There we go. I tried. I blame you.
It's broader way.
So there is some confusion about what that actually means for a person's lifestyle after they are vaccinated. I'll give you an example. My parents have already gotten their second dose. They're fully vaccinated. Does that mean it's okay for them to spend time with their grandchildren who obviously have not been vaccinated? What's your recommendation?
You know, I'm not going to make a recommendation now except to say that these are things that we...
The guy who said you should wear 3 masks is all of a sudden shy about making recommendations.
We really do. I mean, literally every day, Dano, we look at that, we look at the data, we look at what's evolving about how many people are getting vaccinated, and there will be recommendations coming out. I don't want to be making a recommendation now on public TV. We want to sit down with the team, take a look at that, and you will be seeing relaxation of some of the stringencies.
The taxpayer pays Dr. Fauci about $478,000 a year, and for all of that money, we can't get him to make a recommendation on whether or not you can hug your grandma after she gets vaccinated. I mean, what are we getting for that money there?
Not enough.
As more and more people get vaccinated. I promise you that, but I don't want to really do it right now.
Well, just to make it personal, I mean, you've been very open about the fact that you've been skipping holidays with your family. You're fully vaccinated. Are you seeing your family?
Right now, not yet. Not yet. I mean, I would look forward to it within a reasonable period of time as the rest of my family gets vaccinated. I mean, obviously, I'm with my wife every day.
Right.
She has gotten her first dose, will soon get her second dose. But my children, when they get vaccinated, obviously, I look forward to seeing them. And I'm sure that by that time, recommendations will come out to guide us in a more precise way.
You and the president have suggested.
Guess not. He was pretty old. I bet his children are old. When's the last time you saw your mom, Dyer? Moving on.
That will approach normality toward the end of the year. What does normal mean? Do you think Americans will still be wearing masks, for example, in 2022?
You know, I think it is possible that that's the case. And again, it really...
So just going back over the numbers we just went through. COVID cases in America have dropped by 66% since mid-January. We are not going to be wearing masks for a reason. We might be wearing them, but not for any particular reason, not because of COVID in 22. Yeah, in 22. Like that trajectory, and the we're vaccinating 1.3 million a day right now. That's expected to get up to 2 million a day by the middle of summer. We already have 20% of the population has been vaccinated. I mean, the idea that we're any more than a couple of months from the absolute end of this is just it is not backed by the science. When you have a just absolutely plummeting infection rate and an absolutely skyrocketing vaccination rate. I mean, you guys have probably played Pandemic before the game. You know, once they start vaccinating, the game's kind of over. You all of a sudden they start vaccinating people. All of a sudden the infection rate drops, and all of a sudden they cure everybody, and then you lose the game. That's what's about to happen to COVID right now. They're starting to get vaccinated. It already burned through a lot of the vulnerable population. It burned through a lot of the invulnerable population. It burned through a lot of the young people who didn't really get that sick, but they picked up that immunity. The vaccine's picking up a lot of the people in the middle. A lot of the people who are most susceptible, like old people, either Cuomo's already killed them or we're keeping better care of them in the other states. So the virus just doesn't have a lot more people to be getting into. The rate's dropping. We're going to be hitting that herd immunity if we haven't already. The science that would support the idea that this is still a raging pandemic 11 months from now, there is just no current data to support that. It is pure conjecture or even fantasizing. There is no data that supports the idea that we will be doing this into 2022.
I'm sure that they, just like other COVIDs, and the flu and the cold virus, there'll be other variants of it, but I don't think it's like, I don't even think any of this was required in the first place. But I think they could probably like they're talking about the new variant, right? They're gonna probably it may not be a good reason to go have lockdowns, but is a possibility that the government and Fauci might recommend it without a good reason.
Yeah.
That's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, they certainly love it, but there's just not good evidence. Follow the science. There is no science for it. They are just pure conjecture. Let's see here.
Depends on what you mean by normality. If
right.
normality
That's what I want you to define
exactly the way it. No.
Yeah, I think it might have been interesting for Fauci to experience some abnormality in his salary. He sit there laughing about the idea. Oh, it's so funny. You guys think it's going to go back to normal? Oh,
you think this is normal?
You small business owners, you working class people. You think you're going to get your job? Meanwhile, he's cashing the checks from your tax dollars.
Yeah, he thinks this is normal. He thinks that it's normal for people to not be able to work for months and months on end. He thinks it's normal for people not be able to feed their families, not be able to. This is ridiculous. This is not normal. He is insulated from the consequences of his own actions.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the frame that I paused it on here. They are talking about having a deadly pandemic raging for another year. Well into the next year, and Fauci just cannot wipe the grin off of his face. He's just laughing like a hysterical person. Now, there is this phenomenon that I'm sure you can speak more to with military people, right? Like you look for war. It's something. It's kind of a morbid obsession that you would, that's your job. So you're somebody who would want to have a war, even though that sounds counterintuitive to what you're supposed to do. It's just one of those things. So for Dr. Fauci being a epidemiologist, he would thrive in a pandemic environment. He almost kind of wants one, even though he knows it's kind of the counterintuitive to what he's supposed to be doing. But what this face right here, the glee that he's showing, that's a little bit above and beyond that effect. That's more reaching into like psychopathy.
Yeah. So there's when you train your entire life or a large portion of your life to do a certain thing, and it is built into your life's purpose. It's what you believe you're supposed to be doing. That's what you're meant to do. And then if that thing just doesn't happen, you feel you still have a longing for you to be able to execute your purpose, right? And it's not like, oh, I want for my friends to die, and I want my country to be at risk. It's just that's what you were being trained to do, and it's what you're driven to complete your purpose.
Yeah.
It's not intellectual. It is not like you've decided you want this thing to happen. It's emotional.
Yeah, but if you were if you were in like a full scale, like let's say they're talking about like World War III now. I mean, if you're talking about your World War III, where you're like, man, like I'm gonna have to go to battle, and we're gonna have to do all this crazy stuff, and we're gonna have to manage troops and all this stuff. And like you had a gleeful face like Fauci does.
No, that's terrible.
Yeah, like that is a psychopath right there.
Absolutely, because in war, it's suffering. It's suffering for everyone you know, everyone you care about is suffering. You are living through the worst suffering possible, and no one should want that. That is sane. No sane person wants that. Even though they're like, when I came back from my deployment, I was already thinking about the next deployment. Right? The deployment sucked, but I was doing the thing that I've been training to do. Right? So there's a validation, you like being able to fulfill your purpose, but at the same time, you don't want to have yourself and others suffer.
Well, and it's I guess you would describe it as a reluctant longing. Like you reluctantly are longing for the battle.
Yes, and it's not a joyful thing.
Yes,
it's not.
Fauci is very gleefully longing for another 12 months of severe pandemic so that he gets to be master and commander. That's the difference.
Power he has.
That's the difference. Is there's no reluctance in his longing for this to continue. You can see it in his face.
Yep.
We are led by psychopaths and tyrants. Possibly kid diddlers.
Gross.
And Jewish space lasers. Alright, I don't really believe in the Jewish space lasers. It's just funny. It's by far the funniest conspiracy theory.
Is it just a space laser with like the Star David on it?
Well, I don't. So here's the big question: Is the space laser Jewish, or is the laser itself Jewish?
Or is it the people who are operating it? And are they like little Jewish men or women inside the laser itself, or are they on the ground controlling it?
I think that might have been anti-Semitic.
Saying someone's small?
I don't know. It's a weird time.
I don't think that's
I just thought it'd be funny to accuse you of that after I've been talking about it all the whole time. It's like, oh, Dyer, you went too far. You're like, I didn't even say anything.
I said gotta be small to be in a satellite.
The only thing that we know for sure is that the Air Force won't be in charge of it.
I know, or anything for much longer, apparently. Because we're obsolete.
Yeah, he's still the F-35.
That's not helping.
All right. Well, just some other notable mentions on COVID is, I'm pretty glad that they're going after Cuomo finally. Yeah, but I'm really just wondering why Whitmer is being able to steer clear of that, because I believe that the number of nursing home deaths in Michigan, for the exact same reason as New York, was that Whitmer sent sick patients into nursing homes. I believe the number there is more like 25,000, and Cuomo only killed 15,000 old people. So, like, I don't know why Whitmer is getting off scot-free here.
A much higher percentage of them died, too.
Yeah. And also you've got the Pennsylvania tranny that Joe Biden just nominated for deputy health secretary.
Also pedophile.
Yeah, she. I don't know about that one. We don't have that one verified. She made a policy in Pennsylvania for the same thing, that they're going to send sick people into nursing homes, and before they did it, they pulled their mom out. Because they knew that they were about to kill all the other old people, and they didn't want to kill their mom. But somehow doing that gets you a nomination for, I guess, Deputy Health Secretary of the whole U.S. So I'm glad they're going after Cuomo. I would like to know when they're going to go after at least Whitmer and this other guy.
I think corrupt individuals are comfortable working with other corrupt individuals because they know that there's mutually assured destruction. There's no one that's clean that will not be damaged by outing them.
Well, and that's kind of this theory with the whole Epstein thing, right? Is like the reason why, and this goes on in Hollywood too, is like the reason why Hollywood is able to survive all of its sexual scandals and the Epstein thing and all that is because it's not any one person, it's all of them, and if one of them goes down, they all go down, and so they all make sure that it stays hidden.
Right.
So No, although her being in the health secretary position, it does dramatically increase the maybe Kamala wanted him there because Joe Biden, I mean, she's really good at killing old people, and Joe Biden's no spring chicken. So
you just committed a hate crime by calling her a him.
I've been slipping back and forth and using they the whole time.
I know, so you're definitely going to jail. Is all I'm saying. Your credit scores.
I've got all the. Yeah, I know. I got all my bases covered.
Your credit score is going to suck.
I have like I've worked very, very hard on keeping a very pristine credit score, and if they change the formula on me, like I don't like the formula. I think it's stupid, but like I am very good at playing the game. Like they set it up as a game. These are the rules. I have figured out.
That's what I was saying earlier. Like there is a set number of set rules.
Yeah,
that you just need to follow.
Yeah, exactly. And like I've followed the rules. It's easier to do when you got money. I still was able to do it when I didn't have money. I mean, they set it up. You just got to follow the rules. I mean, even though they're stupid, but like them's the rules. And if you follow them, you get a high score, and if you don't, you get a low score. It's not complicated. People
you're not black, so screwed.
Yeah, I know, right? So if they go change that formula, and all of a sudden I'm getting sandbagged 100 points because my skin is far too fair. They're gonna unironically have the Family Guy meme where they're holding up the color palette to your skin, and they'll figure out what your credit score is. I'm really kind of pissed because I worked real hard on doing a good credit score, and then if it starts changing because my skin's the wrong color.
You look at this all wrong, man. You're forgetting that you are black now.
Yes, remember? That's right.
So, problem solved.
Can I make up a new race, like the new genders, and just be a new race and be like extra oppressed?
Did you be like demi-black?
Yeah, why is it? Did we just discover a new thing?
I'm also demi-black.
Nobody's ever talked about this before. I mean, all the genders. I mean, they make those up like 3 a day, but like nobody's ever made up a new race before. Man.
I was gonna say black curious, but that actually sounds sexual. So
yeah, that is very sexual. That's a real thing.
Oh, it is.
We need
shit.
It's like a sexual fetish thing. We need to explore new races. I think that's the next frontier, and I think that we just trailblazed that. So Dyer and I will make up our own new races, and then we'll identify as those new races next week.
I'm a race non-binary. Thank you.
Well, I am a binary race. So.
Yeah, I think I've decided I'm black now.
Dyer's a wolf race. He gets to openly identify now.
All right, we'll see you guys on the next show. Dire Wolf out. You've been awesome.
All right, Travis signing off. Thank you guys.
Oops.
Have a good weekend. Good luck with your credit score.